Warrior Lore. Chapter 2075. Rise. Xiao Hua's 10 fingers opened slightly, and his spiritual power faintly penetrated into the three-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace. A clear sound came from inside the furnace, and it was actually the sound of a thunder beast roaring towards the sky. Moreover, a rich fragrance spread throughout the entire alchemy room. Xue Xue stood far away in a corner of the alchemy room, and her eyes revealed endless admiration and pride. Looking at Xiao Hua, who was about to condense the pill, there was a trace of uneasiness behind that joyful expression. Right at this time, Xiao Hua chuckled and looked back at Xue Xue. He formed a spell with both hands. The spell was very obscure, and the fluctuation of spiritual power was extremely strange. It was very different from the alchemy methods seen in the Xiaoyu continent. Fortunately, Xue Xue didn't know alchemy at all, and there was no other strange expression in her eyes except for admiration. However, what puzzled Xue Xue was that as Xiao Hua formed a spell, the slightly vibrating alchemy furnace began to stabilize, and the hissing sound also became smaller. However, at the same time, the fragrance in the room also disappeared, as if it was restrained inside the alchemy furnace. This was very different from the alchemy techniques she had heard of. When Xiao Hua waved his hand, a faint black and white brilliance flashed above the alchemy furnace, and Xiao Hua's face was slightly surprised. Huh, this Ling Lei pill, can it be pulled out? Xiao Hua muttered in a low voice, and didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately waved his hand, and the flame under the alchemy furnace was immediately extinguished. He waved his hand, and a jade slip appeared in his hand, and he carefully read it. After a long time, Xiao Hua put away the jade slip, but his brows didn't loosen. Husband, Xue Xue saw this and asked in a low voice, "Is there a mistake?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "What mistake? It's just the process of refining the Ling Lei pill. It's a little different from what your husband knows. Your husband originally wanted to refine a few pills at once. Who knew that you could only refine one pill, which really makes your husband unhappy?" Hee. Xue Xue covered her mouth and laughed. Husband is really greedy. This Ling Lei pill is a heaven-defying item. My Xue family's ancestors spent a lot of effort to refine one pill, and you want to refine a few pills at once? Is this a joke? This concubine will be satisfied with just one. Hee. Xiao Hua's mouth curled into a sly smile. My wife's problem has been solved, but what about our children? Husband still wants to leave some benefits for them. Hee. Xue Xue's face flushed red when she heard this. She giggled and said, "With an alchemist like you, whenever the children need it, you can just refine it." But within Xue Xue's charming smile, there was still a trace of gloom, far from what others could see. Wife is right. Xiao Hua exaggeratedly slaps his forehead. If there is one child, this husband will refine it once. If there are 10 children, this husband will refine it 10 times. It really isn't a big deal. Hee, not shy at all. Xue Xue was abnormally shy, like a real young lady. After a short while, Xue Xue asked again, "That's right. Husband, is the soaring lightning pill done?" That's fine." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "The pill is already done. Since you can't pull the pill, wait a moment. This husband will directly collect the pill." "Good," Xue Xue said with a faint smile. "After refining the soaring lightning pill, this concubine will follow husband to QC. There should be enough time to comprehend that wonderful technique along the way." Xiao Hua heard this and thought of another matter. To go to QC, one must pass through Ink Cloud Black Forest. Xiao Hua was very clear about the dangers of Ink Cloud Black Forest. If there wasn't any special passage, it would be very difficult for Xue Xue, who was a refiner, to pass through. At this moment, Xiao Hua felt some movement outside the cave. He laughed in his heart. Good. Whoever wants to come can come. This is a good opportunity to ask fellow Taoist Yu if he has any shortcuts. However, when he released his divine sense and saw the person outside the cave, his face showed displeasure. The person outside was the Fire Qilin of Ardent Fire Mountain. "Wife, the Fire Qilin has come. I wonder what's the matter," Xiao Hua said in a low voice. Xue Xue nodded slightly and said, "Husband, you can just send him away. No matter what, husband will make the decision." "Okay," Xiao Hua replied and went outside the cave. The fire Qilin heard the noise and saw Xiaohua come out. Its gaze was still looking behind Xiaohua, but it was disappointed that Shui wasn't behind Xiaohua. "Where is fellow Taoist Shui?" the fire Qilin asked. "I will let fellow Taoist know," Xiaohua said neither arrogantly nor humbly. "My wife is in closed-door cultivation and can't see guests. I wonder if fellow Taoist has something to say?" "Fellow Taoist Xiao," the fire Qilin asked sincerely, "this fire knows that you and Shui aren't dual cultivating, and this fire will be returning to Ardent Fire Mountain with grandfather today. This fire came today just to see fellow Taoist Shui." "Fellow Taoist fire is leaving?" Xiaohua was somewhat surprised and asked curiously, "The auction just ended a few dozen days ago, and the elders of Ardent Fire Mountain are returning?" "Yes, something strange happened in Ardent Fire Mountain. Grandfather has to hurry back." The fire Qilin was somewhat absent-minded. It didn't care about the advice of the three elders of Ardent Fire Mountain and casually said the reason, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this fire just wants to see fellow Taoist Shui. It's fine even if we don't talk." "Sorry, fellow Taoist fire, you should go back," Xiaohua said after pondering for a moment. But the fire Qilin was somewhat stubborn. It seemed as if it didn't understand the tactful words. It pushed Xiaohua and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you are only Shui's senior brother. Taking a step back, you can be considered a senior brother and sister with a closer relationship. Since you haven't dual cultivated this fire, however." When the fire Qilin spoke to this point, it stopped again because its hand was pushing Xiaohua's shoulder. Xiaohua did not retaliate. It only felt that Xiaohua was standing there like an iron wall, not moving in the slightest. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you want to force this fire to make a move?" The fire Qilin sneered. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He didn't show any panic and said with a smile, "If fellow Taoist fire wants to give me pointers, this Xiao will accompany you at any time." "Good." The fire Qilin was furious. It waved its hand, and the surrounding world's spirit energy began to condense as if some powerful magical art was being cast. Wait, two voices sounded at the same time. They were the crisp voices of female cultivators. "Fellow Taoist Shui, you came out? I knew you would definitely come out." The fire Qilin didn't pay attention to the female voice behind it. It was pleasantly surprised as it looked behind Xiaohua and hurriedly said. Shui slowly walked out from behind Xiaohua. Her face was cold as she coldly walked to Xiaohua's side. She stretched out her hand and grabbed Xiaohua's arm. She said, "Senior Fire, this junior has already made it clear in the cave of the Ardent Fire Mountain that this junior will be Xiaohua's wife in this life. Even if we can't dual cultivate, even if we can't live and die together, even if this junior becomes a ghost, this junior's body will belong to Xiaohua. Senior Fire should extinguish those delusions and properly cultivate. In the future, when you meet a female cultivator to your liking, you can then dual cultivate." -8. Chapter 2076. Shui. Fellow Taoist Shui, Fire Qilin saw that Shui seemed to be unable to complete his sentence. "What other thoughts do I have? I naturally know what you're thinking. I just want to see fellow Taoist Shui before leaving Haoming City. My blazing fire mountain is thousands of miles away from the Imperial Thunder Sect, but this is nothing. I can be considered to have cultivated successfully now. If I wholeheartedly want to see fellow Taoist, this distance is nothing. But how can this distance compare to the distance in my heart? Even if I'm facing fellow Taoist Shui now, I know that the distance in my heart is greater than the entire Dawn Rain continent. I can't surpass this distance even if I cultivate for a lifetime. I just want to see fellow Taoist Shui once, just once." These words were said with deep feelings, and even Xiaohua was slightly moved. But Shui didn't wait for Fire Qilin to finish speaking and asked indifferently, "Since Junior has already come out, it can be considered as meeting Senior." "Senior, is there anything else?" "No, nothing else." Fire Qilin was like a stunned goose as he answered. "Well, since we've already met and Senior has nothing else, Junior will return." Shui glanced at Fire Hibiscus behind Fire Qilin and said, "Junior thanks Senior Hibiscus for taking care of me in the past." After speaking, she turned and left without waiting for Fire Hibiscus to speak. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, Fire Hibiscus had an apologetic look on her face as she cupped her hands and said, I didn't plan to come and bid farewell to fellow Taoist, but I saw cousin coming over and was afraid that something had happened, so I followed. Since there's nothing else, I'll return with cousin. I hope to see fellow Taoist Xiao again in the future. Well, I even hope that fellow Taoist Xiao and sister Shui can get married soon. Thank you for your auspicious words. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I can't send fellow Taoist off. Please forgive me. It's fine, fellow Taoist. Please return. Fire Hibiscus glanced at Fire Qilin, who was in a daze, and said with a bitter smile. Then, Xiao Hua turned and returned, sealing the cave abode. Fire Qilin actually stood there in a daze for the time it took to burn an incense before leaving quietly. Wife, why did you say those words just now? Truly inappropriate. Xiao Hua watched the Fire Qilin leave and grumbled in a low voice. Hee, husband, if I don't say that, how can I make that Fire Qilin give up? Shui laughed. I'm just saying, why take it so seriously? I just don't feel good. Xiao Hua shook his head. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. The Ling Lei pill should be done, right? Shui urged. This concubine is looking forward to it. All right, Xiao Hua's expression was greatly refreshed when he heard Shui mention the Ling Lei pill. He said, I will keep the Ling Lei pill now. We should also prepare to leave Haoming City. In this Haoming City, it's really a little aggrieved. Under Shui's caress, Xiao Hua once again entered the alchemy room. At this time, the alchemy room was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be a slight sound coming from the alchemy furnace, like the chirping of birds or the swimming of fish. Listening to this sound was like the sound of nature. Moreover, the entire alchemy room was restored to its previous aura. The rich fragrance had completely disappeared. If one smelled it carefully, perhaps one could smell a trace of it when one got close to the alchemy furnace. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and knew that it was the best time to collect the pill. Therefore, he signaled Shui to stay away from the alchemy furnace. He took a deep breath and mobilized the true essence in his body. Spiritual power surged into his fingers, and he slowly launched a series of alchemy techniques. The techniques hit the alchemy furnace. At first, there was no movement. After a while, the alchemy furnace emitted a faint brilliance. When Xiao Hua waved his hand, the top of the three-legged vermilion bird and phoenix pattern furnace opened. With a soft sound, a dazzling brilliance flashed. A cloud like the shadow of a thunder beast was born from the alchemy furnace, and there was a gray flash in the cloud. Collect, Xiao Hua scolded softly. A real shadow flashed in his hand, and he launched a series of alchemy techniques on the cloud. However, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was attracted by the techniques, and it actually formed small hurricanes around the cloud. These hurricanes rotated around the cloud layer and slowly absorbed the cloud. The shadow of the thunder beast also slowly shrunk and was absorbed by the gray flash. With a pa sound, there seemed to be some lightning in the void, and it lingered around the already formed Ling Lei pill and entered it. Great! Seeing that the lightning disappeared with the sound, and a thumb-sized Ling Lei pill rotated slightly in the air, Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He knew that the Ling Lei pill was finally completed. With a wave of his hand, the Ling Lei pill fell into his hand. It seems to be different from what was recorded in the jade slip. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the gray Ling Lei pill. His divine sense was also blocked by the surface of the Ling Lei pill, and he couldn't help but be a little surprised. However, in his heart, he faintly felt that this Ling Lei pill formula was the real Ling Lei pill. Husband, seeing Xiao Hua holding the pill in his hand, Shui's face was hard to suppress the joy, and she whispered, Is the Ling Lei pill completed? Yes, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the Ling Lei pill flew to Shui, but he said, however, it is different from what was recorded in the jade slip. Oh. Sure enough, Shui received the Ling Lei pill, and with her eyes and divine sense, she nodded and said, According to what was recorded in the jade slip, the Ling Lei pill has a strange fragrance, and there will be phantoms of lightning beasts in the surroundings, and there will even be miniature lightning beasts inside the pill. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly, touched his nose and said, Yes, and the Ling Lei pill should be half the size of a fist, far bigger than this. The color is also a little wrong. Shue Shue continued. It should be black and white threads intertwining. Speaking up to here, Shue Shue realized something and quickly shut her mouth, put the Ling Lei pill into the jade bottle, and said with a smile, "This is already not bad." Husband only looked at the jade slip and refined the Ling Lei pill without anyone's guidance. This wife doesn't know what to say. Xiao Hua didn't care about Shue Shue's explanation, and after thinking for a while, he said, "This husband's pill refining method is different from what was recorded in the jade slip, or the pill refined is different. However, this husband believes that since it can be refined, this Ling Lei pill will definitely be useful. This wife doesn't doubt my husband." Shue Shue pursed her lips and said with a smile, "However, this wife will wait until later to take it." "As you wish," Xiao Hua nodded. "We will prepare to leave Bright Dawn City." "Don't wait a few more days," Shue Shue shook her head and said. "The disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain might still be nearby, and if we encounter them, we won't be able to do anything, as my wife says." Xiao Hua also didn't want to see the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain, so he nodded and agreed. On the 3rd day, Yu Qin came, and just as he sat down, he smiled and said to Xiao Hua, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this old man has failed you." Huh. Xiao Hua originally saw the smile on Yu Qin's face and thought that there was some whereabouts of the bone tempering technique, but Yu Qin actually said this, and he couldn't help but feel surprised. However, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "No matter, this thing is rare, and this Xiao didn't plan to make it easy. If fellow Taoist you found it so quickly, this Xiao would be puzzled again." Hee, fellow Taoist Xiao, Yu Qin drank a mouthful of spiritual tea and said, "This old man has failed you because this old man didn't get any accurate information from the city lord?" Xiao Hua laughed and clapped his hands, saying, "So fellow Taoist you was joking with this Xiao." Hee, my city lord is a nascent soul cultivator, and his knowledge is 10,000 times better than ours. Although he doesn't know the whereabouts of the bone tempering technique, he has heard some rumors. Yu Chun smiled proudly. According to him, this bone tempering technique was left behind from ancient times, and it has long disappeared from the Dawn Rain continent. It should be around 1,000 years ago. He heard a senior occasionally mention that there was a record in the ancient records of a certain sect that there was an ancient race who refined their bodies and tempered their bones on the overseas Sunset Island. Sunset Island? Xiao Hua said happily. "Isn't that the exact location?" Hee, this old man also had the same idea. Yu Qin said with a smile, "But the Kueha Sea is huge, and there are very few overseas cultivators. There is no island named Sunset Island among the few known in Haoming City." "Oh, this is not good," Xiao Hua said with a frown. "Yes, the waves in the Kueha Sea are stable, but the overseas area is full of monstrous waves, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is scarce. How can we find this so-called Sunset Island?" Yu Qin echoed. "I think fellow Taoist Xiao should make other plans." After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "Forget it. I promised junior sister that I would accompany her to the Kueha Sea. Since I'm going, I'll go and find her. If I don't go, I will have an inner demon in my heart." Fellow Taoist Xiao wants to go to the Kueha Sea. Yu Qin frowned and asked, "Fellow Taoist, don't forget that from Haoming City to the Kueha Sea, you have to pass through the Majiao Black Forest. After passing through the Majiao Black Forest, you have to cross the whole Ming country. Without a flying spiritual artifact, fellow Taoist Xiao and fellow Taoist Shui will encounter more than a little difficulty." Hee, isn't this just for experience? Xiao Hua said with a smile. "If not, how can junior sister Shui build her foundation?" "Well, okay." Yu Qin nodded and clapped his hands. He took out a jade slip and said, "This is the map of the Kueha Sea that I found in the Sutra Pavilion in Haoming City. If fellow Taoist Xiao insists on going, then take it." "Oh, thank you so much, fellow Taoist Yu." Xiao Hua was even more surprised. He bowed and thanked Yu Chun and reached out to take it. Xiao Hua didn't look at it carefully. He scanned it with his spiritual sense and put it into his space. Then, he asked, "Fellow Taoist Yu, you came at the right time. I want to ask if there is a secret path through the Majiao Black Forest in Haoming City." Yu Chun was a little embarrassed. There are several secret paths in Haoming City. However, Because of the Majao Black Forest, these secret paths are all ineffective. We just found one recently, and it's not very stable. The danger inside is also unpredictable. That's good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, as long as there is a secret path, it will save me and junior sister Shui the trouble of going into the Majao Black Forest. As he spoke, he clapped his hands and took out a storage bag. This secret path must belong to Haoming City. These spirit stones are for me to buy information, so I won't make things too difficult for you. Fellow Taoist you, if you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. -8. Chapter 2077. Well, Yuchen looked at the storage bag and reached out to take it. He nodded and said, this secret path is indeed a recent source of income in our Haoming City. It's specially managed by the elders, but I can't take it. As for the spiritual stones, I'll take them. There's more. Xiao Hua waved his hand again, took out a jade bottle and handed it to Yu Chun. This is to thank you for the sea map. Please accept it. Yu Chun wanted to refuse, but thinking of the spiritual herbs last time, he hesitated a little and took it first. When he opened the jade bottle, he was a little moved. The elixir inside was exactly what he needed to condense elixirs. Alas, forget it. Yu Chun smiled bitterly. I didn't want to exchange the sea map for your elixir, but this elixir, in my eyes, the sea map is 100 times more precious than this Lingli pill. You don't have to be so polite. Xiao Hua waved his hand and smiled. Yu Chun didn't refuse anymore. He took the Lingli pill and said, fellow practitioner Xiao, there are many practitioners coming to our Haoming City to participate in the auction, including the practitioners of Ming Country. Many of them came from the Mo Baoland. Now the secret path is ineffective. If they want to go back to Ming Country, they have to take a long detour or use the secret path in our Haoming City. Therefore, there are many practitioners who want to pass through the secret path. Our Haoming City has also collected a lot of spiritual stones to arrange for these practitioners to leave. I'll try my best to arrange for you to leave first, but I'm afraid that it will take half a year to make the arrangement now. So long? Xiao Hua was stunned, but he thought for a moment and said with a smile, it doesn't matter. Now that I'm in your territory, do I have any scruples? Okay. Yu Chun nodded and got up. It's not too late. I'll go back and arrange it. Fellow practitioner Xiao, you can cultivate first. After seeing Yu Chun off, Xiao Hua explained the matter to Shui Shui and asked her to cultivate in the quiet room, while he himself went to the alchemy room. With a clap of his hand, he took out a storage pouch from the space and muttered to himself, since there's half a year of meditation time, it's exactly what I want. Yin Yu's storage pouch contains many medicinal pills and pill recipes used by Foundation establishment cultivators, and even some medicinal pills used by Golden Core cultivators. This young master will also take advantage of this time to take some medicinal pills and refine a few cauldrons of medicinal pills. Unfortunately, the Jade Slip has the pill formula for the Minghua pill, but it doesn't have the pill formula for the Elaine pill and the Huayuan pill. It's really too tight. Then, Xiao Hua took out the clear flower pellet from his storage pouch and a drop of earth crystal Yao milk. He first poured it into his body, then put the clear flower pellet into his mouth. This was another rare opportunity for Xiao Hua to cultivate. After the closed-door cultivation, Xiao Hua carefully and stingily refined the earth crystal Yao milk, while taking some medicinal pills. After stabilizing his cultivation base at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he slowly pushed his cultivation base to a higher level. At the same time, in his spare time, Xiao Hua was still refining pills. After a few more failures, he successfully refined the clear flower pellet used by the middle stage of Foundation establishment. Looking at the clear flower pellet that didn't have any medicinal fragrance, Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. This clear flower pellet had tortured him enough in the past. It was like a flying sword hanging over his head, ready to take his life at any time. But it was also this clear flower pellet that sent him to the Imperial Thunder sect, which led to all the things that happened afterwards. Otherwise, he wouldn't know where he would be cultivating now. Perhaps he would be abandoned by the heavens, a member of the heavenly demon sect. But now? The clear flower pellet that caused his meridians to burst was an ordinary medicinal pill that he used for cultivation. Moreover, one or two of them wouldn't have much of an effect. Thinking of the endless possibilities, Xiaohua faintly felt that karma was tangled up in a disorderly manner, like a messy ball of thread. Unconsciously, he understood. He put the clear flower pellet into his mouth and his mind entered the space. The karma hand in the space faintly glowed. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly attached his mind to the karma hand and carefully comprehended it. After an unknown period of time, Xiaohua felt some movement outside the space. He withdrew his mind from the karma hand and opened his eyes. He saw Xue Xue looking at him with a pair of big eyes. She didn't disturb him at all. "Husband, you came out of seclusion?" Xue Xue's eyes flashed as she asked in a low voice. Xiaohua smiled and said, "How long was your husband in seclusion?" Xue Xue glanced at the cauldron beside Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Husband's cultivation is really amazing. You have been in seclusion for more than a year. Even the medicinal pills in the cauldron were ruined, and you didn't wake up." Io, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. When he was comprehending the karma path, the clear flower pellet was still on the cauldron. Who knew that a year would pass in the blink of an eye? How could the clear flower pellet not be ruined? What a pity for these spiritual herbs. Xiaohua looked at the cauldron that was still warm and the cauldron that had already lost its medicinal fragrance and said with regret, "Yes, it's these message talismans that are disturbing my comprehension." Xiaohua released his divine sense and saw several crimson communication talismans outside the cauldron. Xiaohua understood that Yu Chan must have come to visit him and arranged for him to go to Ming country through Emojao Black Forest. Seeing Xiaohua open the restriction and let the transmission talisman in, Xue Xue wanted to say something but hesitated. She had seen Xiaohua's abnormal state when he was cultivating before, so she didn't dare to disturb his cultivation too much this time. However, Xiaohua's abnormal state this time was different from before. This time, Xue Xue couldn't help but watch with concern. What kind of abnormality was this? A multicolored thread emerged from the back of Xiaohua's head. It circled around the alchemy room and immediately turned into countless threads. They passed through the alchemy furnace, passed through the alchemy liquid, passed through everything, and scattered outside. Then, many more threads came back, passed through Xiaohua's body, and came out again. When Xue Xue finished cultivating, she didn't see any movement from Xiaohua. When she came to the alchemy room, the multicolored threads had already turned into a huge cocoon of light, surrounding Xiaohua. How could this not shock Xue Xue? Several transmission talismans were out of Xiaohua's expectations. In addition to Yu Qin's, there was also one from a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect's Taoist Master Mi Yu. There wasn't much content in it, only that Taoist Master Mi Yu was leaving Haoming City to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect. If there were disciples who had finished their experiential learning, they could follow Taoist Master Mi Yu back to the sect. Xiaohua didn't care about this message. After all, it was already half a year ago. However, this message was a rule of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Any ordinary disciple who received this transmission talisman would definitely be full of glory and eagerly go to Taoist Master Mi Yu to register to return to the sect, because this was an excellent opportunity to get close to a nascent soul cultivator. Thinking about how Xiaohua could casually give Bai Fengliang a foundation establishment pill, then wouldn't a nascent soul cultivator be able to casually give foundation establishment and golden core cultivators different benefits? This was also because Taoist Master Mi Yu saw Xiaohua appear in the auction for nascent soul cultivators, so she ordered her disciple to send this transmission talisman. Otherwise, how could an early foundation establishment disciple like Xiaohua receive this transmission talisman? Alas, this opportunity was also lost by Xiaohua. -8. Chapter 2078. Yu Qin's messaging talisman was even simpler. He came several times, but Xiaohua didn't respond. He also understood that Xiaohua should be in seclusion, so he didn't disturb him. There were many cultivators going to Inkcloud Black Forest, so he could arrange things more freely if Xiaohua left later. Xiaohua looked at several messaging talismans, then sent out Yu Qin's messaging talisman, and then asked Xue Xue, "Wife, how's your cultivation method? If it's successful, I'll accompany you to Haoming City to build your foundation. Otherwise, I have an appointment with Captain Yu, so we have to set off for QC." Xue Xue didn't hesitate at all and said with a smile, I don't know why. I always have some lingering thoughts that this isn't the best time to build my foundation. Even the cultivation method you gave me has improved a little. I've already decided, so let's talk about it on the way. It's up to you. Xiaohua said with a smile. That cultivation method is beneficial to the meridians, so you'll have more confidence if you cultivate it for a few more years. Your foundation is different from mine. It's related to your life, so you have to be careful. Then, Xiaohua put away the pill furnace and other things, and Xue Xue also put away the things she left in the cave. Not long after, Yu Chun came to the cave. As soon as he saw Xiaohua, he looked up and down, but he couldn't find any clues. Xiaohua's cultivation was still in the early stage of foundation establishment. However, Yu Chun still said with a smile, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xiao. You've been in seclusion for another year. Your cultivation must have improved a lot." Xiaohua didn't think so and waved his hand, saying, No, I'm just a foundation establishment cultivator. How can I improve after a year of seclusion? I'm just relying on my leisure time here to stabilize the realm I just set foot in. Yu Chun didn't ask anymore and turned his head, saying, Then, fellow Taoist Xiao, are you going to continue your seclusion? Or are you going to Incloud Black Forest? If you're in seclusion, you have to give me the spirit stones for this cave first. The spirit stones you paid in advance for this cave are already not enough. Ha ha ha, seeing Yu Chun joking, Xiaohua laughed and said, Fortunately, fellow Taoist Yu is in Haoming City, or I would have been kicked out of the cave long ago. Ha ha ha, Yu Chun also laughed. When Yu Chun sat down, Xiaohua told him his plan. Yu Chun nodded and said, Everything has been arranged by this old man. Tomorrow, there will be a group of cultivators passing through the Incloud Black Forest. 10 days later, there will be another group of cultivators. Whatever fellow Taoist Xiao thinks is possible. Oh? Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. Yu Chun was even more surprised than Xiaohua. He said curiously, The Imo Zhao Black Forest is full of dangers, not to mention the Imo Sand and Imo Zhao. Even the rarely seen giant Imo Zhao and golden silk armor Ho can appear at any time. If it is not a nascent soul realm senior, no one can say that they can pass through it safely. Even if there is a secret path, most foundation establishment cultivators travel in groups. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He scratched his head and said, Please forgive me, Taoist Yu. This is the first time I've come to the Incloud Black Forest. I didn't know it was so strange. If fellow Taoist Xiao is alone, this old man will naturally tell you the location of the secret path. Yu Chun said with a smile, but fellow Taoist Xiao also has a delicate junior sister. In this old man's opinion, you should go with others. I will listen to fellow Taoist Yu's instructions. Xiaohua had always been a person who went with the flow. Hearing Yu Chun's advice, he naturally agreed casually. But then, Xiaohua's heart moved and he asked again, Then, who are these two groups of cultivators? Yu Chun said casually. This was not a secret. After all, these names were registered in Haoming City. Moreover, these names must be kept secret. When they set off, they must know each other's names. What? 10 days later, there will be disciples of Jinhua Mountain's Fu family passing through the Incloud Black Forest? Xiaohua did not care about the names of the first group of cultivators passing through the Incloud Black Forest, even if he seemed to have heard of the name of Blood Ray Island. Yes, it's the Jinhua Mountain's Fu family. Yu Chun nodded and said, It seems to be an elder called Fu something. That's the 12th level of Qi refining. What? Fellow Taoist Xiao is on good terms with this Fu guy? How can we be on good terms? We just met a few times when our cultivation was low. Xiaohua said with a smile. He was not sure whether he knew this Fu or not. Oh, I see. Yu Chun nodded and said, Then with fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation, you can take care of them. Take care of them? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood that Yu Chun should be talking about the Incloud Black Forest. Can fellow Taoist Zhao's name be announced to them? Yu Chun said with a smile. Can it not be announced? Xiaohua asked. Yes, that's right. Yu Chun nodded and said, There are two cultivators traveling with Jinhua Mountain's Fu family who requested to hide their names. Oh? Hearing this, Xiaohua looked at Yu Chun's eyes and immediately understood. It turned out that the take care Yu Chun was talking about was more important than this. That's good. Junior sister and I will also not reveal our names. When the time comes, we can just wear camouflage clothes. Xiaohua nodded and said, Good. Yuchen nodded and clapped his hand, taking out a jade slip and saying, Inside is the location of the gathering 10 days later. Fellow Taoist Xiao, keep it well. When the time comes, my Haoming City's disciples will be responsible for sending you to the edge of the ink-cloud black forest. I won't be sending you off. I hope that the next time I see fellow Taoist Xiao will already have the same cultivation as me. Fellow Taoist Yu is joking. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, It takes 30 years to go from early stage to mid-stage foundation establishment, and 60 years to go from mid-stage to late stage. How long has it been since I came back from Ming country? How can I catch up with fellow Taoist Yu? Ha ha ha, Yuchen laughed. Without saying anything else, he drank a few cups of spirit tea and left. This senior Yu already knows that my husband's cultivation is at mid-stage foundation establishment? Xue was somewhat surprised. After Yuchen left, she quietly asked. Yes, Xiaohua nodded slightly and said with a smile, If he didn't see my cultivation at mid-stage foundation establishment, how could he want to be on good terms with me? However, I really did get a lot from him. It seems that in the future, I'll have to make friends with cultivators of the same realm. 10 days later, somewhere in Haoming City, Xiaohua and Xue, dressed in camouflage, arrived in front of a dozen or so cultivators. The person in the lead was a city guard around the 11th layer of the aura refining realm. After Xiaohua handed the jade slip to the city guard looked at it and saluted very respectfully. Greetings, seniors. Yes. Xiaohua raised his hand and said, I'm not late, right? This group doesn't seem to be here yet? Senior, please no, the city guard said respectfully. The disciples of Mount Jinhua and the 2 seniors aren't here yet, but the others are. Senior, please wait a moment. When the time comes, I can immediately lead the seniors to Inkcloud Black Forest. All right. Xiaohua nodded and turned his head to the side, ignoring the city guard. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, about 5 or 6 aura refining cultivators quickly walked over. Xiaohua's eyes brightened. Sure enough, as Yuchen said, the ones in the lead were the elders of Mount Jinhua. However, it wasn't just 1, but 2. Xiaohua just happened to know these 2. One of the elders was Skyward Pavilion's Fu Feng. The other was guest elder Lu Yun. The current Lu Yun was quite different from when Xiaohua first met her. Her hair was completely white, and the wrinkles on her face had increased. However, the only thing that hadn't changed was her plain robe. Looking at Fu Feng again, he was a male cultivator after all. His hair and beard were still white, and he couldn't see any special changes. Of course, the 2 of them still had one thing that didn't change, which was their 12th layer aura refining cultivation. Alas, seeing that the 2 people who were previously high up didn't make any progress in their cultivation, Xiaohua inwardly sighed. I've been following the wind and the current smoothly. I haven't thought about it for a long time. How many cultivators are there on Dawn Rain continent, and how many can step into foundation establishment? And how many can step into core formation? Cultivation is really too difficult. I came late. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist. Fu Feng walked at the very front. When he saw Haoming City's city guard, he promptly smiled apologetically. The city guard didn't have the respect he had when he saw Xiaohua, but he also didn't have any intention of looking down on him. He faintly smiled and said, Elder Fu, don't be anxious. The time hasn't come yet. There are still 2 more fellow Taoists. Fu Feng knew that Jinhua Mountain was nothing in the eyes of Haoming City. In any case, he was an elder and still needed to protect Jinhua Mountain's face. Thus, he cupped his hands and casually walked to Xiaohua's side. After waiting for several Jinhua Mountain disciples to stand still, Xiaohua smiled again. Wasn't the one standing behind Fu Feng precisely another old acquaintance of his? That Skyward Pavilion's Fu Shan. At this time, Fu Shan was already middle-aged, and his cultivation had also stepped into the 9th layer of aura refining. He could still be distinguished from his appearance. How interesting. Xiaohua inwardly laughed. I haven't seen a Jinhua Mountain disciple for a long time. I almost forgot about him. I didn't expect to meet him here all of a sudden. I wonder what a Jinhua mountain disciple wants to do through Inkcloud Black Forest. Thinking up to here, Xiao Hua suddenly quivered and came to a realization. Damn it, I understand now. Didn't I see him before? It seems he wants to go to Ming through the transportation formation. I don't have time to look for him, but Jinhua Mountain will meet. Jinhua Mountain must have obtained information about him and went to look for him. Only this way can Jinhua Mountain send 2 elders. Thinking of the coincidence, Xiao Hua naturally thought of the twin talisman jades and talisman puppets that were like flowers and moons, as well as the talisman puppets that lost their lives for love. Alas, I wonder how the coincidence is now. Does he know that his whereabouts have already been exposed? Xiao Hua slightly wrinkled his brows. After all, he still had the talisman refining method on him, and some cultivation methods that he had promised to temporarily keep. Xiao Hua had long since had no use for these things, but he had no choice but to return the coincidence. It's better to return the coincidence. Xiao Hua very simply made a decision. At this time, the last 2 enchanting cultivators also came. These 2 cultivators took out the jade slips. After the city guard examined them, they quietly stood to the side and didn't say anything. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept through the 2 cultivators' enchanting cloaks. He couldn't see their true faces, but he already knew that they were at least Foundation establishment. This was because Xiao Hua currently possessed core formation strength. As long as the cultivation of qi condensation was below the 12th layer, the enchanting cloak couldn't obstruct his inspection. -8. Chapter 2079. Strange, Xiao Hua had Yu Qin's warning in advance, so he was very careful. When he saw the 2 cultivators, he couldn't help but think of Qiu Mingwei and Liao Xianlan. After all, he had refined talismans with Liao Xianlan on Jinhua Mountain and had seen the grudges between the Fu family and the Liao family. However, now that he thought about it, Qiu Mingwei had already made it clear that he wanted to stand up for Liao Xianlan, but because of Xiao Hua, the Foundation establishment cultivators of the 3 sects came together and forced Xiao Hua to flee. Now that so many years had passed, there should be an end to it. Liao Xianlan and Qiu Mingwei might not be thinking about the Fu family. Of course, the most important thing was that Liao Xianlan was only in the 5th layer of qi refining at that time. Xiao Hua didn't think that she could surpass Xue Xue and reach Foundation establishment in one fell swoop. It's better if it's not the Liao family of Gung Mountain, Xiao Hua thought to himself. This way, I won't have to get involved in the grudges between the 2 families. This kind of scheming and deceit is everywhere in the Xiaoyu continent. I don't want to get involved in it. When the last 2 cultivators appeared, the city guard of Haoming City checked the jade slip and immediately led Xiao Hua and the others out of the city. He escorted them all the way to the edge of the ink shadow Black Forest, where there was an extremely secretive secret path, before he turned around and left. This secret path was obviously different from the one Xiao Hua had taken before. It was very close to the ground, and his divine sense was abnormally stable. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please, Fu Feng said very politely to Xiao Hua. The distance between Haoming City and Inkcloud Black Forest was not short, and it was enough for Xiao Hua to get close to Fu Feng. Fu Feng knew that there was nothing in Jinhua Mountain that anyone coveted except for talismans, so he wasn't afraid of Xiao Hua's probing. Although he was a little vigilant, he was still very polite to this cultivator. After all, it was good for him to not provoke or befriend a cultivator. Xiao Hua glanced at the people around him. In addition to the 2 cultivators in camouflage, there were 3 cultivators in the early stage of Foundation establishment. The other 20 or so cultivators were around the 11th layer of qi refining. So he said to the 2 cultivators, "Fellow Taoist, how should I address you?" "My surname is Qiu." The man raised his voice and replied, "I understand what fellow Taoist Xiao means. However, I am here to travel with my beloved concubine and have no time to care about other matters. I bid my farewells." With that, the cultivator clasped his hands and grabbed the other cultivator. The 2 of them flew into the secret passage. Surname Qiu? Beloved concubine? Xiao Hua stared blankly. He'd already excluded Qiu Mingwei from the list, but this cultivator actually declared himself to be surnamed Qiu, which sounded very similar to Qiu Mingwei's surname. Could it really be Qiu Mingwei? Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, but then shook his head. This young master is overthinking things. This fur coat might be Chiu, or it might be Chiu. It might not be Chiu Mingwei's fur coat. Moreover, it's impossible for Liao Xianlan to dual cultivate with Chiu Mingwei. After all, the difference in age and cultivation between the two is too great. Fortunately, the other three foundation-building cultivators also brought their own aura-refining disciples. They were actually willing to cooperate with Xiaohua and pass through the secret passage together. Therefore, after some slight arrangements, everyone flew into Inkcloud Black Forest. This time, it was different from when Xiaohua entered the forest. The purpose of this trip was only to pass through. Moreover, this secret passage had been inspected by Haoming City, and many cultivators had passed through it safely in the past few years. Even before entering Inkcloud Black Forest, the disciples of Haoming City had already explained many things to take note of. Therefore, more than a month later, at the other end of Inkcloud Black Forest, when Xiaohua hurriedly flew out of Inkcloud Black Forest, the people of Mount Jinhua, the three foundation-building cultivators, and their disciples were already safely waiting outside. As soon as they saw Xiaohua fly out, the three foundation-building cultivators flew up and bowed. "Senior, thank you for your help. If you weren't here today, we would all be buried in the mouth of Inkcloud." Xiaohua, who was flying in the air, had a bitter smile on his face. It was not a big deal at first, but when they were about to reach the end of the secret path, an ink zhao suddenly appeared. Everyone knew how powerful this ink zhao was. Even golden core cultivators had to retreat, so how could a group of foundation establishment cultivators withstand it? One by one, they fled like monkeys scattering when the tree fell. Their escape was not a big deal, but Inkcloud, who seemed to be lost and even leisurely strolling, became interested and chased after them. Xiaohua had no choice but to tell Xue to stay behind and lead Inkcloud to another place. Finally, he used the Earth Escape technique to escape from the Black Forest. "It's okay," Xiaohua said with a smile. "It's fate that we are going the same way. It's not a big deal for me to help you." Seeing Xiaohua's indifferent demeanor, the three foundation-building cultivators were very embarrassed. They all smiled apologetically and said, "We didn't know your cultivation level, Senior. Along the way, we were slow. Please forgive us." "Haha, the ignorant are not guilty." Xiaohua waved his hand. "If it weren't for this ink cloud, I wouldn't have let you know my cultivation level." The three foundation-building cultivators looked at each other and smiled apologetically. "We are cultivators from Ming Kingdom. May I invite you to our sect for a chat?" "No need," Xiaohua said with a smile. "I'm just traveling around. I don't want to get into trouble." However, after he finished speaking, he had a thought and asked, "I came to Ming Kingdom to ask you about something. Please ask, Senior." The three said respectfully, "There is a cultivation family in the south of Ming Kingdom. They might be good at refining. Do you know which family it is?" Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked by accident, "Haha, Senior asked the right person." One of the cultivators bowed and said, "I am Miao Yin from the Miao family in Ming Kingdom's Qi City. Qi City is in the south of Ming Kingdom, close to the QC. As far as I know, there are two famous refining families. One is the Fei family in Jiqing, and the other is the Qin family in Fan City. I wonder which family is Senior looking for?" This, Xiaohua was speechless. He didn't know whether the cultivator holding the gold leaf in the auction in Chiu City could refine or not. However, if he asked the families in the south of Ming Kingdom, he wouldn't have any clues. Seeing that Xiaohua was silent, Miao Yin said with a smile, "If Senior is interested, Junior can accompany Senior to Jiqing and Fan City. My Qi City's Miao family is somewhat famous in the south of Ming Kingdom. It won't be difficult to find a cultivation family." If it wasn't for the matter of Mount Jinhua, Xiaohua naturally would have followed Miao Yin. However, seeing that the Jinhua Mountain Elder and Xiu Mingwei had also come to Ming Kingdom, he was afraid that they would all rush over. How could he give up? Therefore, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Forget it. Now that I have something to do, let's wait for the future." "All right." Miao Yin clapped his hands and took out his communication talisman. He respectfully handed it over and said, "This is Junior's communication talisman. If Senior comes to Qi City, please inform Junior. Junior will do his best." "Good." Xiaohua accepted it with a smile. Miao Yin was also happy. -8. Chapter 2080. Senior, this junior is Shui Pei from Xianlu sect. This is Junior's communication talisman. Another Foundation establishment cultivator quickly took it out and respectfully handed it over. Oh, so you are a disciple of Xianlu sect? Xiaohua nodded and said, this old man has seen Taoist Master Bluefeather, Taoist Li Chengxiu, and Taoist Jiming in Haoming City. Why didn't you go with them? Hearing that Xiaohua had actually seen Taoist Master Bluefeather, Shui Pei's face became even more respectful. He smiled apologetically and said, how could this junior have a place in front of Grandmaster Bluefeather? Didn't this junior just come back from the outside world? Even Marshal Uncle Li and senior brother Jiming didn't see her. Then, he carefully asked, may I know where senior met Grandmaster Bluefeather? Hee, naturally at the auction. Xiaohua smiled and said, if it was somewhere else, how could this old man have seen her? This junior is Zheng Zhihao from Clear Leaf sect. This is Junior's communication talisman. When the last Foundation establishment cultivator saw that Shui Pei had finished asking, he quickly took the initiative to hand over his communication talisman. The last trace of scruples from before had long disappeared. Clear Leaf sect? This name is somewhat familiar. Where have I heard it before? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. However, he thought for a moment and was sure that he had only seen many cultivators from Ming country at the Feather Immortal Assembly. He really hadn't met them at other times. Okay, Xiaohua took the 3 communication talismans and said with a smile, if this old man has any matters, I will have to trouble you to wait. We dare not, the 3 smiled and said. For a senior like Senior who saved people without asking for the reason and led the trouble to others, we are willing to serve Senior. Then, the 3 of them took their disciples and flew away. Senior, when it was Jinhua Mountain's turn, Lu Yun, who had always been slightly cold, accompanied Fu Feng and flew in front of Xiaohua with a respectful expression. This junior didn't know that Senior. Fu Feng stuttered. He thought that Xiaohua was just an early Foundation establishment cultivator. He didn't expect that he could actually kill a Mo Zhao. This was the strength of a golden core cultivator. He was Senior Fu Feng Senior. Okay. Xiaohua waved his hand. Just when he was about to speak, Fu Shan, who had a flying charm stuck on his body, flew towards him again. He was so scared that he forgot that his flying charm was about to lose its effect. Moreover, he was flying towards the tunnel. He fell from the sky after flying for a few feet. If Xiaohua did not catch him in time and give him a flying charm, he would have fallen into a Mo Zhao's mouth. Seeing Fu Shan fly away, Xiaohua looked at this guy with interest. Back then on Jinhua Mountain, Fu Shan had made things difficult for Xiaohua quite a bit. However, from the looks of it now, Fu Shan was just jealous of Xiaohua because of the talisman puppet. How could Xiaohua take it to heart? Junior thanks Senior for saving my life. Fu Shan flew closer, but he didn't dare to get too close. He bowed and saluted with a grateful look. If they weren't in midair, he would have already kowtowed to thank him. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and said indifferently, it's nothing, not worth mentioning. May I know Senior's name? If you can bestow us with a name, we will definitely remember it. Fu Feng quickly asked. How could Xiaohua tell them his name? He smiled and said, just know that my surname is Xiao. Why do you need to know my name? Junior understands. Fu Feng replied with a lowered eyebrow. Lu Yun also felt a bit ashamed. She bowed and said, Junior is Jinhua Mountain's guest elder, Lu Yun. Junior thanks Senior for saving my life. Junior had misunderstood Senior before. I hope Senior can forgive me. Don't say any more, Xiaohua waved his hand. I was just casually helping you. It's really troublesome for all of you to go up and thank me one by one. Yes, Junior doesn't dare. Lu Yun thought that her previous coldness had angered Xiaohua. Her face showed a bit of panic as she hurriedly stood up. Fine, Xiaohua saw Lu Yun's appearance. He didn't know whether to explain or not. He could only frown and said, I don't like conventional etiquette. I don't have any other intentions. You all don't need to think too much. After saying that, his body floated up and said, I want to travel in Ming country. You all can go. Yes, Fu Feng, Lu Yun. Jinhua Mountain and the others all bowed and said, "Farewell, senior." Xiaohua just flew up a few feet and asked casually, "Oh right, why did you all come so far with your qi refinement cultivation? Did something happen in Ming country?" This, Fu Feng was a bit hesitant. Lu Yun smiled apologetically and said, "I, Jinhua Mountain, have some private matters to deal with in Ming country. Junior and the others need to go to White Bamboo Mountain. Hee, I have no intention to inquire about your whereabouts. I also won't interfere with the matters of Jinhua Mountain's Fu family." Xiaohua was secretly happy. His purpose was obviously to inquire about the whereabouts of Fu Feng and the others. However, he still said, "The Tumi Ho cultivators who passed through the secret passage seem to be interested in you all. Their cultivation is above foundation establishment, so I have to remind you all." After saying that, Xiaohua pulled Shui and flew up, disappearing in a direction. "Senior." Fu Feng heard and hurriedly raised his voice. Unfortunately, Xiaohua deliberately avoided him and didn't pay attention to him. Looking at Xiaohua's flying figure, Fu Feng didn't blame Lu Yun for revealing their purpose. He whispered, "Elder Lu, according to Senior Zhao's words, our operation today was leaked? How could we, Jinhua Mountain's qi refinement cultivators, be coveted by two foundation establishment cultivators? Could it be that the cultivator surnamed Qiu is Qiu Mingwei?" Qiu Mingwei? Lu Yun also realized and said in surprise, "The middle foundation establishment cultivator who fought with our family head several decades ago in Jinhua Mountain? It's that senior." Fu Feng's face was very gloomy. He was present that day and knew how powerful Qiu Mingwei was. "If this senior follows us, we will be in great danger this time." "But that's not right." Lu Yun frowned and said, "When Qiu Mingwei came to Jinhua Mountain several decades ago, he was already a middle foundation establishment cultivator, and his cultivation was already higher than our family head. If he has any ulterior motives, why would he follow us? Wouldn't he be able to kill us with a flip of his hand? We still need to be careful." Fu Feng still shook his head. "In my opinion, we should. Elder Fu, are you going to return to Jinhua Mountain?" Lu Yun was surprised. "It's just a cultivator surnamed Qiu. Do we have to take the risk and go through the ink cloud black forest?" Fu Feng's expression changed a few times. He looked at the sky in the distance and seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he said, "Elder Lu, you don't know. We came to Ming Kingdom this time not only to find Fu Zhu, Fu Puppet, and the corresponding information, but more importantly, Fu Feng didn't dare to neglect the rest of the words and only transmitted them to Lu Yun." "Ah? There's such a thing?" As a guest elder, Lu Yun obviously didn't know much. Only now did she understand the importance of this trip and couldn't help but cry out, "That's right. If that cultivator is really Qiu Mingwei, then what he covets is the foundation of Jinhua Mountain?" Fu Feng said while gnashing his teeth. Hee, I'm afraid it's not that complicated." Lu Yun thought for a while and said with a smile, "As far as I know, Senior Qiu came to Jinhua Mountain for the Liao family of Gung Mountain and the girl named Liao Xianlan. If Senior Qiu still wants to find trouble with Jinhua Mountain, it must be Liao Xuanlan's idea." Senior Xiao said clearly that there are two foundation establishment cultivators. One is the partner of the other. If Liao Xianlan is here, how can she be a foundation establishment cultivator? Besides, if two foundation establishment cultivators come together, we can't resist any means. Even if the family head is here, it's useless. I don't think this person is Qiu Mingwei." Lu Yun said decisively. "That's strange." Obviously, Lu Yun thought the same as Xiaohua. Fu Feng also realized it and scratched his head. "I don't understand why Senior Xiao said that. Alas, if I knew, I would have told Senior Xiao more. Maybe we hid it from him and made him angry. Otherwise, we could have asked Senior Xiao to help us." Fu Feng said regretfully. "Senior Xiao is a golden core cultivator. How can he care about our trivial matters?" Lu Yun said disapprovingly. "We should think about how to solve it ourselves. Elder Fu, don't say that the family head doesn't have a backup plan." Hee, that's natural," Fu Feng said with a smile. "When the family head was traveling in Ming country, he had two good friends. They are also foundation establishment cultivators. Moreover, they are from Ming country's cultivation families. If we ask them to back us up, We should be able to scare away this foundation establishment cultivator who might be senior chill. That's good, Lu Yun said while clapping her hands. Immediately, the people from Jinhua Mountain flew toward the south of Ming country. Damn it, I almost ruined it with just one sentence. Xiaohua sat cross-legged a few li away. He used his divine sense to check the area. After Fu Feng and the others flew away, he let out a sigh of relief and said, if they turn back to Jinhua Mountain, it would be hard for me to find a suitable one. Who knows if the white bamboo mountain they talked about is real or fake? Husband, you seem to be very interested in this Jinhua Mountain, Shue said with some confusion. Jinhua Mountain is considered a talisman-making family. However, they are currently in a decline. Compared to my Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Mountain, they are still lacking a lot. Hee, you don't know, Xiaohua said with a smile. Your husband has some stories in Jinhua Mountain. Is that so? Shue's eyes lit up. She said with a smile, I'm all ears. Good, Xiaohua nodded. Let's talk as we walk. Several months later, in the south of Ming country, in an endless grassland, two figures flew through the sky. They flew past the faint, dark clouds and rushed toward the towering mountain in the distance. These two people were Xiaohua and Shue. Ming country was somewhat different from Shi country. There were more grasslands and mountain ranges. Relatively speaking, there were fewer lakes, rivers, and barren hills and rivers. Moreover, there were many small cities in Ming country. Some of them were occupied by secular people, some of them were occupied by cultivation families, and there were even more than 10 cities controlled by cultivation sects. Along the way, Xiaohua and Shue passed through mostly small cities. There were very few big cities. Of course, they were tailing the disciples of Jinhua Mountain. Presumably, they were trying to cover their tracks. -8. Chapter 2081. In the past few months, Xiaohua had also made some inquiries. White Bamboo Mountain was located in the south of Ming country. It was not a famous mountain range, and there was only one cultivation family and a small sect around it. Although Fu Feng and the others had concealed their tracks, they had always been heading towards White Bamboo Mountain. They had even inquired about the movements of White Bamboo Mountain. So Xiaohua was certain that the disciples of Jinhua Mountain were going to White Bamboo Mountain. Today, after Fu Feng and the others came out of the transmission array, they rested in a small town and bought some gifts in the small town. Obviously, they were going to meet someone. Xiaohua and Shue did not want to wait for long, so they flew out first. They were already very close to White Bamboo Mountain, so Xiaohua could find the corresponding tracks himself. Husband, you said that the two foundation establishment cultivators might be disloyal to the disciples of Jinhua Mountain, but along the way, we have not seen any traces of them? We have already arrived at White Bamboo Mountain. Why haven't they appeared? Shue stood in the air and asked very leisurely. Xiaohua was a little embarrassed and said with a smile, Yu Chen did not say clearly, how would I know? Maybe the two foundation establishment cultivators asked too many questions, making Yu Chen feel that there is a problem. Right, it has been several months. How is your practice of the cultivation method? When will you take the Linglei Dan? No hurry, Shue said with a charming smile. Could it be that my husband is in a hurry to dual cultivate with me? No. Xiaohua touched his nose and said, even if I want to, I can't say it now. I have been practicing for several months, and I feel that this cultivation method is more and more powerful. Shue said with a serious expression. At this time, my meridians have already expanded a little. If I practice again, I think it can still expand. I want to lay a good foundation for qi refining meridians before foundation establishment. Xiaohua originally wanted to say, after foundation establishment, this dragon transformation art can still be practiced, and your meridians can also expand. But when the words came to his mouth, he stopped. After all, everyone's cultivation was different, and Shue wanted to be steady. So he said with a smile, it doesn't matter. Your husband still has the same words. You can slowly cultivate, and your husband will accompany you until the day foundation establishment. My husband is the best. Shue smiled sweetly, and then she lowered her head and said, unfortunately, no one in this world is as fortunate as I am. Just think about that talisman puppet. For the sake of being suitable, she gave her body to another, yet she still couldn't obtain the love she desired. When I see someone suitable, I'll really ask him properly. Yes, it's more than that. Ever since Xiao Hua told her about his experience in Jinhua Mountain, Xue Xue had endless sympathy for the talisman puppet. She kept mentioning it, so how could Xiao Hua refute her? He added, Songqing is Fu Zhu and Fu Ba's biological siblings. Since they've been intimate with each other, I'd like to see how Songqing will handle this. Are Fu Zhu and Fu Puppet really that beautiful? Xue Xue rolled her eyes and asked, Back then, did you also have a plan in mind? When you entered Mount Jinhua, did you not think that you would find such a beautiful dual cultivation partner and stay in Mount Jinhua for the rest of your life? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This question didn't seem to be the first time he'd asked, right? Thus, Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and replied righteously, All right, I'll let my wife know. Back then, your husband didn't think too much. I only thought about cultivation. If you want to make a name for yourself, any kind of beauty is nothing in front of you. Puffed. Xue Xue laughed and said, I don't believe you. You said it yourself. Songcheng is extremely handsome. Fu Zhu and Fu Ba simply don't like you. My wife. Xiao Hua said awkwardly, It's fine as long as you know this. Why bring it out to attack your husband? Isn't your husband just a little less handsome than Songqing? Besides, my wife already knows, so why ask me every time? Hee, I just want to see if your answer is the same every time. Xue Xue covered her mouth and laughed. But at this time, Xiao Hua didn't respond as expected. Instead, he frowned and lowered his head to look at the ground. Husband? Xue Xue asked curiously. At the same time, she also looked down. However, under their feet was a withered and yellow grassland. Mottled yellow soil could be seen from the withered grass. It was as ugly as a child's head. Xue Xue was very puzzled. She also swept out her divine sense. However, other than withered grass and yellow soil, there was still nothing special. Husband? Xue Xue raised her voice and asked, What's there to see here? Could it be that my husband found the traces of those two foundation establishment cultivators? No, Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a strange light. He shook his head and said, Ever since Emo Zhao and the Black Forest, I haven't seen those two people. Then why did you? Xue Xue asked. Oh, my wife. Xiao Hua pointed at the withered grassland and asked, This grassland is so barren. Don't you think it's very strange? Ah? Xue Xue was stunned. She looked again and shook her head. Husband, I don't feel anything strange. It's already midsummer. It's the time when the rain is moistened. This grassland should be lush with water and grass, cattle and sheep everywhere. However, look, it's all barren. Where did the cattle and sheep come from? Then where did the shepherds go? Xiao Hua patiently explained. Ah? Xue Xue was even more puzzled. She muttered, This? I don't know. Moreover, where the shepherds went, does it have anything to do with us? Yes, the grassland was barren and the cattle and sheep were missing. What did it have to do with Xue Xue? What did it have to do with cultivation? How could Xue Xue know? Come with me. Xiao Hua knew what Xue Xue was thinking. He swept his divine sense and flew towards another direction. Although Xue Xue was puzzled, she still followed. They flew for dozens of miles and arrived at a hilly area. It was a mountainous area. On the hillside, there were layers of cultivated fields. They were like stairs that extended from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. However, at this time, in the cultivated fields, there were cracks from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. The cracks were like dry human skin. Where was the appearance of a cultivated field? In the barren cultivated fields, not to mention the crops, even the grasses were in 2s and 3s. Seeing the deep compassion in Xiao Hua's eyes, Xue Xue was very puzzled. Just as she was about to speak, Xiao Hua raised his head again. He sped up and landed halfway on a hill. On this hill, there was a solitary straw shed. Beside the straw shed, there was a huge rock. Beside the rock, there was a small well. Xue Xue didn't know what Xiao Hua was doing. She silently fell behind Xiao Hua and followed him to the straw shed. The straw shed was very simple and crude. There were only a few crooked branches and some scattered withered grass. Turning around the straw shed, they saw a piece of cultivated field that was several zhang in size. Inside, There were a dozen or so tender seedlings standing there listlessly. However, Xiaohua's gaze swept across the field and landed on the straw shed. He couldn't help but feel a piercing pain in his heart. -8. Chapter 2082. Xue Xue casually glanced around and was immediately shocked. She covered her mouth with her hand and looked inside with her eyes wide open in disbelief. There was only a shabby straw mat in the straw hut. On the mat, there was a 2-chi tall baby boy lying on his back. Well, rather than calling it a baby boy, it was better to call it a skeleton. Because the child's head was big, his eyes were sunken, there was no flesh on his face, and his skin was tightly stuck to his bones. He didn't wear any clothes, his ribs were bulging, his little arms and legs were curled up, and his bones were exposed. If it wasn't for his chest rising and falling, Xue Xue would have thought that this baby was dead just by looking at him with the naked eye. Pitiful, Xiaohua sighed and continued to walk forward. Beside the straw hut was a ridge in the fields. An old man in ragged clothes was squatting there weakly, looking at the dozen or so seedlings in front of him with lifeless eyes. Xiaohua and Xue Xue's voices had already alarmed the old man. However, the old man indifferently raised his head and glanced at them. His turbid eyes were cold, and he lowered his head again. "Sir." Xiaohua walked forward and bowed. "Sir?" Xue Xue once again saw that Xiaohua was different. She understood that although Xiaohua's face was very light, he might not be much younger than the old man. There was no need for him to be so respectful. "Little brother, what's the matter?" The old man seemed to be unwilling to pay attention to Xiaohua. He didn't even look at Xiaohua and said in a low voice. That voice seemed to be in his throat, as if he was afraid of wasting energy. "Sir." Xiaohua's words were stuck in his mouth. He didn't know where to start. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua turned to Xue Xue and said, "Wife, do you have anything to eat in your storage bag?" Yes, Xue Xue hurriedly said. She clapped her hands and took out a jade bottle and handed it to Xiaohua. "What is this?" Xiaohua frowned. "Fasting pill," Xue Xue hurriedly said. Sigh, Xiaohua shook his head and said, "This thing can only be used for fasting. It can't support the consumption of ordinary people." "Oh," Xue Xue's face slightly reddened. She understood Xiaohua's meaning and said in a low voice, "I haven't eaten for a long time. How can I have such things?" Xue Xue's eyes lit up as she reminded him, "My husband, although we don't have any food, spirit fruits should be edible." "That's right." Xiaohua slapped his forehead and waved his hand, taking out several different spirit fruits. After tasting them one by one, his mouth actually gradually became bitter. The spiritual light in his space was abundant, and all the spiritual fruits were full of spiritual qi. This was extremely good for cultivators, but how could these ordinary people eat them? Not to mention the old man and the baby whose bodies were on the verge of collapse. What should we do? Xiaohua scratched his head. He was clear in his heart that the old man's situation was better, but the baby was in danger. Even if he could fly back to the city to find food, the baby wouldn't be able to wait for him to return. Why don't we take the baby and leave? Xiaohua's heart was filled with compassion. "My husband," Xue Xue clapped her hands and took out several dried spirit jujubes. She said in a low voice, "This is what I took out to satisfy my cravings in Xuanlei Palace in the early years. Do you think it's okay?" "Great." Xiaohua reached out to take the spirit jujubes and kissed Xue Xue's face. He said with a smile, "Today, 2 lives were saved by you." Seeing Xue Xue's beaming face, Xiaohua took a bite of the spirit jujube and handed it to the old man. He said with a smile, "Old man, you can eat this spirit jujube first. This little one can slowly ask you." The old man's turbid eyes flashed with a trace of luster. He waved his dark, thin, and dirty hand and grabbed the spirit jujubes. He opened his mouth and was about to throw them into his mouth. "Old man," Xiaohua hurriedly blocked the old man's hand, as if he didn't dislike the filth on his hand. He said in a low voice, "You can only eat this thing bite by bite, and you can only eat half of it." The old man glanced at Xiaohua. He hesitated for a moment, then picked one out with his finger and gently bit off a piece of meat with his teeth. Xiaohua carefully observed the old man, fearing that there would be some problem with this spirit jujube. But after the old man chewed for a while, he actually couldn't swallow it and struggled to get up from the ground. The old man didn't have much strength now. How could he stand steadily? He staggered and was about to fall again. Xiaohua hurriedly supported him and asked, "Old man, where are you going?" The old man didn't answer and rushed towards the straw hut. Xiaohua secretly sighed. He supported the old man with one hand and followed him into the straw hut. Sure enough, the old man hurriedly arrived in front of the infant boy and knelt on the ground with a putong sound. He bent down and used his mouth to pass the jujube meat that he had just chewed into the infant's mouth. As soon as the fragrant jujube meat entered the infant's mouth, the infant greedily chewed. After chewing a few times, the infant's slightly trembling lips stopped and a trace of bitterness appeared on his face. But immediately, he hurriedly chewed again. Obviously, the infant used his only baby teeth to bite his lips. "Inger, slow down. Grandpa still has more here," the old man said in a low voice. He hurriedly took another bite of the jujube meat and wanted to feed it to the infant again. Xiaohua's heart was incomparably bitter. He also squatted down and said warmly, "Old man, the infant's life is no longer in danger. He can't eat too much of this jujube meat. You should eat it first." Inen. When the old man heard this, he looked at the infant's small tongue that was greedily licking his lips. He wanted to give more to the infant, but he was afraid that something might go wrong. He looked at Xiaohua. "Hee, with Xiaoku here, I won't let anything happen to the infant," Xiaohua said again. "Woo-woo." The old man whimpered and finally swallowed the jujube meat that he had chewed for a long time. Sure enough, as soon as the jujube meat entered his stomach, it immediately rushed to his four limbs and bones like a flood. An incomparable comfort spread through his body, and his four limbs suddenly had strength. The old man was wild with joy. He looked at the infant again, and his eyes also opened. He even wanted to sit up. "Thank you, immortal elder." The old man no longer ignored him and bowed his head. "Don't." Xiaohua hurriedly grabbed the old man and said with a smile, "Old man, you should eat another bite. There's no need to keep it all. Later, I will think of a way for you." Yes, the old man's own thoughts were exposed, and he heard that Xiaohua actually wanted to think of a way for him. His eyes lit up, and he reluctantly ate another bite of the spirit jujube. After the old man finished eating the spirit jujube, he slightly closed his eyes and rested for a moment. The infant boy also sat up. Because of his skinny body, his large eyes looked around randomly. From time to time, he would look at Shueshue and then at Xiaohua. This old man's name is Fannong. This old man's grandson, Inger. The old man rested and bowed. "This old man thanks Immortal Elder and Immortal Elder for your great kindness. I also ask Immortal Elder to bestow names. This old man and grandson will definitely set up a longevity tablet for Immortal Elder and Immortal Elder, and we will worship you every day." Hee. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and said, "I's name is Xiaohua. This is I's lover, Shueshue. As for the longevity tablet, let's talk about it later. Old man, first tell I, why is this place so barren?" AI. It's hard to explain in a few words. Fannong sighed. He pointed down the mountain and said, "This old man lives in the Fan Manor at the foot of the mountain." Following Fannong's finger, in a depression at the foot of the mountain, there was a village. Scattered villages were scattered around in twos and threes. And Xiaohua casually scanned with his divine sense and was about to ask again. But at this moment, Xiaohua's face slightly changed and he angrily said, "Bastard." As he spoke, Xiaohua's figure suddenly flew up and quickly rushed down the mountain. That speed was definitely something Shueshue had never seen before. "Husband." Shueshue covered her mouth again. She looked at Xiaohua in disbelief as his figure disappeared into one of the villages in the Fan Manor. A moment later, Xiaohua flew back again. His left hand was holding a baby in swaddling clothes, and his right hand was holding a skinny woman. The woman's eyes were tightly closed, and she seemed to have fainted. "Husband, why is that?" Shueshue asked curiously. Xiaohua's face was very ugly. He didn't answer Shueshue and handed the baby to Fannong and said, "Old man, feed some of those dates to the baby." Although Fannong was somewhat reluctant, he didn't dare to disobey Xiaohua's words. He took a small bite of the date meat and chewed it up to feed it to the baby. At the same time, Xiaohua pointed at the woman. The woman sitting on the ground opened her eyes. However, the woman's face was ashen and there was no light in her eyes. She glanced at Xiaohua and then at the baby in Fan Nong's hand. "Let this Xiao ask you," Xiaohua said coldly, "since ancient times, even an evil tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. Why did you kill your own baby?" "Ah?" Shue was shocked and looked at the dark and skinny woman in disbelief. The woman didn't pay attention to Xiaohua and struggled to get up. However, after moving a few times, she didn't seem to have any strength. She sat down again and her ash-white eyes turned a few times and a trace of ridicule appeared. That ridicule angered Xiaohua. Xiaohua said coldly, "This Xiao knows that you have been starving for a long time. If you don't eat, you will die. However, can you bear to eat your own flesh and blood? Are you still human?" "Ha ha, ha ha ha." The woman laughed mournfully. "Of course I'm not human. Why would I be human?" Saying this, she threw herself on the ground and wept weakly. "Daoist Xiao." Fan Nong saw this and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid Daoist Xiao has misunderstood Qianshi. She and Qian'er have always been filial. This, wants to use the child to feed his mother, right?" "Ah?" Shue couldn't help but exclaim. Then what about Qian'er?" "I'll let Fairy Xue know," Fan Nong said mournfully. "If this old man's guess is correct, Qian'er, I'm afraid, is already in his mother's stomach." Shue didn't exclaim this time. Her right hand trembled slightly and her eyes flashed with an indescribable brilliance. "Ai, this Xiao was wrong." Hearing this, Xiaohua's divine sense immediately swept out again. He saw an old woman lying on the ground in the village house on the verge of death. He sighed and bowed towards Qianshi. "How could you immortals be wrong? It's all us mortals who are wrong." Qianshi didn't seem to appreciate it and said coldly, "Even if we ate our own flesh and blood, if there weren't any spirit stones, you definitely wouldn't do anything. You are naturally free and unfettered. Why would you care about our lives? Now, even if you saved my boy, can you save this Nujia? Can you save this Nujia's mother? Can you save the dozens of old and young in my fan manor? Can you revive the villagers who starved to death?" -8. Chapter 2083. Qianshi's words were weak, but when Xiaohua heard every word, for some reason, he felt ashamed in his heart. Yes, he was a golden core cultivator and could kill cultivators with low cultivation at will. He could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, carefree and unfettered, and could view mortals as ants. But what did that count for? In this world, would he be able to save the common people? What was the use of cultivators' cultivation? Shue was even more unbearable. She had never faced this mortal world and had never seen such a cruel situation. She also never thought that under the same blue sky, while she was dancing with her lover, there were many mortals in the mortal world who were in an abyss of suffering, on the brink of death, in a situation where they had to eat raw human flesh to fill their stomachs. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Qianshi's sobs had gradually stopped due to her lack of strength. Xiaohua then came to his senses and sighed. "Excellent. Although I am powerless to reverse the situation now, I will definitely cultivate with all my might and hope that there will be a day when I have the power to reverse the situation. Moreover, today, with my ability, I will definitely spare your lives." Yes, if they were mortals, how could they have any methods? Only cultivators had the power to resist this natural disaster. The stronger Xiaohua was, the more authority he had to speak. "Can you make rain? Can you make rice grow in a barren land?" Qianshi asked again. Even the immortal elders of Misty Cloud sect wouldn't dare to boast like this, right? Ha ha ha. At this moment, Xiaohua was even more enlightened. He knew that there must be some secrets that he didn't know. So he laughed and said, "Since I said it, I will definitely be able to do it. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's save you first." "Husband, I will stay here to take care of things. You should quickly go to U City to buy food. With husband's speed, you will be able to return quickly," Shue said anxiously. "Food?" Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment. Then his eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "Why is it so troublesome? Moreover, if I leave, I'm afraid that many people will die in a short while." After saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the dozen or so half-dead seedlings in Fan Nong's field were collected into his space. Then, he flew in front of Fan Nong and said with a smile, "Old man, come with this Xiao. Let's first rescue the dead people in your Fan Manor." "Yes, I will follow your orders." Fan Nong returned the baby to Mrs. Qian, stood up and smiled apologetically. Thus, Xiaohua grabbed Fan Nong's collar and flew down the mountain. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua brought Fan Nong back to the farmland. Xue Xue hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Husband, what's the situation?" Xiaohua had a bitter smile on his face as he replied, "There are only a few spirit jujubes, and there are too many people who are about to die. Your husband can only choose a few seriously hungry old men or infant boy. I can't take care of the others for the time being." "Then what should we do?" Xue Xue was originally kind. Previously, she treated the common people like ants. Although she didn't pity the common people like Xiaohua, she still became anxious and said, "Husband, you should hurry and go. This concubine will guard this place. I definitely won't let any of them die." "Wife, do you have any good methods?" Xiaohua's eyes brightened, and he said with a smile, "Could it be that you still have some snacks from Sunlei Palace?" Xue Xue's face reddened, and she vigorously shook her head. "AI, we can be considered to have some success in our cultivation." Xiaohua sighed, however. "All of our magic arts are offensive, and all of them are for self-protection. What kind of magic art can help others? Can it save people?" After saying that, Xiaohua swung his big sleeve and used the water spike technique. A large area of blue ice spikes appeared and lined up in midair. Following Xiaohua's hand seals, balls of water condensed on the farmland. These balls of water contained abundant heaven and earth ling qi, and their offensive power was also shocking. However, how could these balls of water nourish the soil? Even if they nourished the several zhang of land in front of them, what about the terraced fields of the entire mountain range? What about the entire Fan Manor's farmland? A feeling of powerlessness spontaneously arose in his heart. Amitabha, Xiaohua involuntarily chanted the name of Buddha in his heart and sat cross-legged. "Husband." Xue Xue saw that not only did Xiaohua not leave to search for food, but he also sat cross-legged. She couldn't help but be shocked. However, she had always regarded Xiaohua as her leader, so she definitely wouldn't say anything that went against Xiaohua. Therefore, she only hesitated for a moment before stopping. On the side, Qian Shi had already heard Fan Nong's words and knew that her mother-in-law had already been saved by Xiaohua. Panic and gratitude appeared on her dark and thin face, and her eyes were filled with incomparable love as she looked at the child in her arms. Those tears flowed down. If it weren't for the fact that she had no other choice, how could she take her own child? Very quickly, several hours passed, and the sky was already dark. Xiaohua was still regulating his breathing. Fan Nong's grandson was hungry again, and he hid in Fan Nong's arms and gnashed his teeth. Qian Shi lifted her lapel and used her thin and shriveled breast to feed the child. However, she also hadn't eaten for a long time and was barely surviving on grass. How could she have breast to feed the child? And the child was just used to sucking. He hadn't tasted breast for a long time. Wah wah. The infant boy wept powerlessly, and Qian Shi gently coaxed him. All kinds of desolation were displayed in the cold wind. Immortal Elder, Qian Shi clenched her teeth and walked in front of Xiaohua. With a plop, she knelt down again. Seeing this, Fan Nong also moved over and knelt down with Immortal Elder, please have mercy. This lowly servant knows that Immortal Elder can do it. This lowly servant also knows that Immortal Elder is different from Misty Cloud Sect's Immortal Elder. You have a merciful heart. Qian Shi gathered her words and cried, "This lowly servant and the others are all mortals. We don't have any spirit stones that Immortal Elder needs, but this lowly servant is willing to exchange her life for his. As long as Immortal Elder can save this lowly servant's mother-in-law and child, this lowly servant is willing to follow Immortal Elder and be ordered by Immortal Elder." Qian kowtowed. Fan Nong did the same, and even curled up his shriveled body and kowtowed with all his strength. Sister-in-law. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and supported everyone. He opened his starry eyes and smiled. Since this Xiao has already reached out, I must intervene. How can this Xiao be the unbearable person that you speak of? Then, Xiaohua flicked his hand, and a large pile of rice appeared in front of them. It was at least 1 zhang in radius. Not only Qian Shi and Fan Nong, but even Shui was shocked. She looked at the rice that seemed to have just been harvested in disbelief. This Xiao has been traveling all this way and didn't care about worldly food, so I didn't dare to leave easily. You can eat this rice first. It should be enough for a few days. This Xiao will go out now and see if I can find more food. Xiaohua said with a smile. Daoist Xiao, Qian Shi and Fan Nong were so happy that they shed tears. They kowtowed and said, "We were blinded by greed and actually misunderstood Taoist's kindness. We really deserve to die." -8. Chapter 2084. Just wait for me. Xiaohua helped the two of them up and said to Shui, "Wife, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the rice. Your husband will go out and find some food." Okay. Shui was happy to see that she could help. She urged Xiaohua to leave while she put the rice into her storage pouch and flew back to Fan Manor with Madame Qian and the others. Not to mention Fan Nong and the people of Fan Manor taking care of the rice. Xiaohua flew into the sky with a heavy heart and flew towards Yu City. His mind entered the space again. At this time, many puppets were moving. They were reclaiming the remaining land in the space piece by piece. On each piece of land, there was a puppet responsible for planting rice and harvesting rice. Xiaohua's space was originally conducive to the growth of spiritual plants. Ordinary rice like this could mature in just a few hours. However, the rice seedlings that Xiaohua obtained from Fan Nong's terraced fields were too little. Moreover, although Xiaohua asked Fan Nong how to plant rice, it was different from the planting method in his memory. He had no choice but to use the pond water that he obtained from Emojiao Black Forest to form paddy fields. Then, he began to use the puppets to try to plant rice clumsily. These pitiful puppets that ordinary aura-refining cultivators trembled in fear when they saw them. At this time, they were actually doing the work of a peasant. If Emo Qingyuan knew, he would probably fly over from the North Desert to fight Xiaohua. Alas, there are still not enough puppets. Xiaohua pulled his mind out of the space and sighed. These rice can't save many people. It's better to go find food. Xiaohua left for an entire night. The next day, when the sun was high in the sky, Xiaohua returned to Fan Manor with a worried expression. At this time, Fanzhuang had already recovered some of its vitality. Many of the more robust farmers were processing the rice in the paddy field. When they saw Xiaohua flying over, they all threw down their farming tools and kowtowed. They thanked Taoist Xiao. The corners of Xiaohua's mouth curled into a smile. He used his big sleeve to help everyone up, and with a wave of his hand, he took out piles and piles of grains and piled them on the ground. Moreover, in the midst of everyone's cheers, he took out several cows from his spirit storage pouch. Alas, it's really hard on Xiaohua. He's actually still thinking about those babies who are drinking milk in his heart. Perhaps the shriveled black and skinny from last night had left an unforgettable mark in his heart. Husband, Shui's face was also filled with joy as she flew over. Clearly, she was very satisfied with helping the world and saving people yesterday. However, when she saw the worried expression on Xiaohua's face, she was slightly stunned. She turned and asked in a low voice, "What's going on? Didn't he already get the food? How?"
Alas.
Xiaohua sighed and replied, "All along the way, we only coveted the beautiful scenery and were free and unfettered, and we've never paid attention to the hardships of the mortal world. Last night, I didn't dare to fly too far away, so I only checked around Yu City. This disaster seems to be much more serious than we thought." "Husband, what do you mean?" Shui's face tightened as she asked anxiously. "It's not just the Fan Manor that's suffering from the disaster. There are many places around Yu City that are suffering from the disaster." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "It's just that the Fan Manor is extremely inconvenient. Fan Nong and the others can't travel far, So many people have starved to death. Although other places are on the verge of collapse, there are still people starving to death. The food? Shui Shui asked quietly. Xiaohua smiled. I found all of these with my divine sense. They belong to those rich families. I took some from each family, so it won't affect them in any way. That's good. Shui Shui smiled. I was worried that you would harm those people after saving them. How could I? Xiaohua smiled. My wife, you've worked hard too. Alas, it's nothing. Shui Shui sighed again. I've never thought that the mortal world would be like this. Compared to them, my life is really like an immortal. That's right. Xiaohua was just about to speak when Fan Nong quickly walked over with a few white-haired old men. Several people didn't even wait for them to get close before bowing and kowtowing. How could Xiaohua let them kowtow? He hurriedly waved his sleeve to stop them. The old man in front saw that they couldn't kowtow, so he smiled respectfully and said, I'm the leader of the Fan Manor. My name is Fan Yunxiao. Yesterday, thanks to Reverend Xiaohua's grace, I didn't die on the spot. Also, I've just received news that Reverend Xiaohua has brought countless food. My Fan Manor is finally safe in Reverend Xiaohua's hands. I've already told everyone in the Fan Manor to not only remember Reverend Xiaohua's grace in their hearts, but also to set up a longevity tablet in everyone's home. They must pray to God day and night to bring blessings to Reverend Xiaohua. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't take this kind of statement seriously. He smiled and helped the old man up, saying, Old man Fan, please rise. As long as I can contribute 30% of my strength, I definitely won't slack off 20%. To be able to see my fellow villagers living a peaceful life, I am happy in my heart. Reverend Xiaohua is really a kind person. Fan Yunxiao said with tears of gratitude. Xiaohua politely said a few more words before instructing, Sir Fan. Although this humble Taoist has obtained this rice, it is still limited in the end. In this humble Taoist's opinion, if the healthy people have already rested, it would be better to plant this rice as soon as possible. While the current season is still good, we will be able to harvest a season of crops before winter. Reverend Xiaohua, you're an otherworldly person. You actually know about my farming? Fan Yunxiao said in astonishment. Haha. Xiaohua didn't explain, but Fan Yunxiao's face was bitter. He said in a low voice, It's not that my Fan Manor's children are lazy. Even if the rice is planted, if there's no rain, the rice won't grow. Oh, Xiaohua nodded. After thinking for a moment, he asked, Fan Manor's drought. How long has it been? AI. It's hard to explain in a few words. Fan Yunxiao sighed. He found a place to sit down and tirelessly explained the cause of the matter. It turned out that Fan Manor used to be a place with plenty of food. Although it was inconvenient to move around in the surrounding Tinli, the weather was good and there weren't any special disasters. However, 10 years ago, the weather began to change. Now and then, there would be floods and droughts. It was no longer the same weather as before. Last year, it was even more serious. There wasn't even a drop of rain. Fan Manor's old folks didn't even have a harvest. They even had to take out the seeds they had stored for many years to eat. Fan Nong, whom Xiaohua first saw, could only rely on the water from the well on the mountain to barely preserve some seedlings of rice. Moreover, according to Fan Yunxiao, there was a cultivation sect near Yu City called the Misty Cloud sect. They once came to Fan Manor and said that as long as the people of Fan Manor paid a certain amount of spirit stones every year, they could guarantee that there would be rain in Fan Manor's terraced fields. However, Fan Manor's secular people didn't have any spirit stones. After pleading to no avail and taking out gold and silver, the Misty Clouds sect's cultivators left. What made Xiaohua most angry was that a month ago, the Misty Clouds sect's cultivators came once. Even though they saw Fan Manor's miserable state, they still didn't show any expression. They coldly looked at them for a few times and didn't even say a word before flying away. It was precisely because of this that Qianshi looked at Xiaohua with such cold eyes. Because in her heart, all cultivators were cold and indifferent, treating them as if they were nothing. Misty Cloud sect? Xiaohua slightly frowned. He didn't seem to have heard of this Ming country's cultivation sect from the cultivators. It should be a small sect, but they could actually make rain. They could do something that Xiaohua, a gold core cultivator, couldn't do. Could it be they were swindled? Xiao Hua stroked his chin and frowned as he pondered. But thinking about it, even if the Misty Cloud sect's disciples wanted to swindle, there was no need to swindle these secular people. Elder Fan, Xiao Hua asked, this Misty Cloud sect's cultivators can really make rain? Have you seen it before? This old man doesn't have any spirit stones here, so naturally I haven't seen it before, Fan Yunxiao said with sweat. However, I've heard from people far away that when the Misty Cloud sect's immortals waved their hands, countless clouds would fly out from their sleeves. The clouds could cover the entire mountain. I know that when the immortals blow, the clouds can make rain. This Xiao understands. Xiao Hua slightly nodded and transmitted his voice to Xue Xue. This way, the Misty Cloud sect must have a magic treasure that can move clouds and make rain. The Misty Cloud sect's disciples are guarding this gift from the heavens, but they don't favor the living beings. Then this husband will go and take that magic treasure and make rain for the living beings. Usually, Xiao Hua was silent and sometimes even deliberately hid his strength and did not reveal it. But at this time, for the sake of irrelevant people, he was actually full of lofty sentiments. Xue Xue's eyes unconsciously lit up. She couldn't help but deepen her admiration for her sweetheart. This concubine will wait here. Xue Xue knew that she would only cause trouble if she went, so she said with a smile, wait for my husband's triumphant return. Definitely. Xiao Hua said with a smile, this husband will definitely step on 7-colored auspicious clouds and return with rain and dew. Seeing Xiao Hua's relaxed appearance, Xue Xue's heart also relaxed. She knew that Xiao Hua was very confident in himself. Moreover, when she thought of the lightning escape technique that Xiao Hua revealed yesterday, she saw that it was much faster than her master Sun Ming. Even if he couldn't succeed, escaping with his life wouldn't be a problem. Xue Xue only said, be careful, my husband, before sending Xiao Hua away. When Xiao Hua flew out of Yu City, his face showed a dignified expression. He had inquired clearly in Yu City. The Misty Cloud sect was indeed not a big sect, but a small sect on the Green Cloud Mountain, far away from Yu City. However, the sect master of this small sect was not simple. He was a late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. However, this was not the key point that Xiao Hua was worried about. The Misty Cloud sect was slightly different from other sections. They had inherited the ancient talisman crafting technique. It was said that the sect could refine extremely powerful talismans. Of course, this was only a rumor because the sect master of the Misty Cloud sect, Yun Tengyu, was only a late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. No matter how powerful his talisman crafting technique was, he was not Xiao Hua's opponent. However, the problem was that Xiao Hua wanted to find out the secret of the Misty Cloud sect's technique, so he had to face the entire Misty Cloud sect. Xiao Hua couldn't really treat the cultivators as nothing and flatten the Misty Cloud sect. -8. Chapter 2085. Xiao Hua naturally had a plan to appease them. He wanted to use spirit stones and other things to solve the problem. However, the information he heard made him nervous. Because Misty Cloud sect's talisman-making technique was passed down from the distant past era, it had more history than Mount Jinhua's Fu clan and even the Qiqiao sect that Xiao Hua knew of. Xiao Hua only knew that right now, the Misty Cloud sect was the same as the Fu family of Jinhua Mountain. They relied on selling yellow talismans and making simple spirit talismans to maintain the sect's livelihood. That technique of moving clouds and summoning rain was the unique skill that the Misty Cloud sect relied on to survive. Misty Cloud sect wouldn't give up so easily. In fact, it was funny. Although Xiao Hua didn't inquire too clearly about the cloud summoning rain technique that Fan Yunxiao and the others talked about, it seemed similar to Misty Cloud sect's yellow talisman called Condensing Rain Talisman. This Condensing Rain Talisman could condense water-type spiritual energy within a certain range according to a cultivator's magic power. Its offensive power couldn't even compare to Icicle Talisman. This kind of talisman, which was worthless in the eyes of cultivators, actually became Misty Cloud sect's tool to snatch food from the nearby secular world. Of course, occasionally, cultivators would also ask Misty Cloud sect's disciples to summon rain and clouds near their own immortals' caves to maintain the scenery. At this time, There were several aura-refining disciples on duty on Mount Jinhua. A young disciple muttered, "Senior Martial Brother, outsiders won't come to our Mount Jinhua. Why are we on duty? It's better to take the condensing rain talisman out for a walk. Maybe we can even earn 1 or 2 spirit stones." "Humph, you only know how to earn spirit stones." Another slightly older disciple scolded. "The day before yesterday, 6th Junior Martial Brother sneaked out. It just so happened that Mount Jinhua's Fu clan came to visit, leaving no one to guard our Misty Cloud sect's gate. We let a cultivator clan from the country of Shi laugh at us. It really made sect head lose face. Sect head just punished 6th Junior Martial Brother. It's only been a few days and you're already itching for a beating?" "Senior Martial Brother, isn't this just a coincidence?" That disciple smiled apologetically and said, "I haven't seen a bird fly over here for half a month. Who knew that someone would come that day?" After saying that, that disciple curled his lips and said, "That's right. It's just a cultivator clan, but they actually came to invite our Mount Jinhua for some private matter." The sect leader had no choice. The senior brother shook his head and said, "According to the martial uncles, Fu Yunbua from the Golden Mount Hua used to be good friends with the sect leader. Moreover, they have a very deep relationship. Even if the sect leader doesn't go, he will send 2 senior brothers or even martial uncles." Do you know if they brought enough spirit stones?" That disciple nodded and said, "The sect leader hasn't given out any spirit stones for a few months. This kid's medicinal pills have already run out." I'm afraid not." The senior brother shook his head. "Otherwise, a few martial uncles would have followed them. Since he's still on the mountain and hasn't left, it means that he hasn't reached an agreement yet." "Hee, senior brother. I heard that 6th senior brother went to Mount Shiming the day before yesterday and bought a few Peiyuan pill in U City with 2 spirit stones. TSK, he is really lucky." Shi Mingshan, that rich man with the surname Chan." That senior brother also smacked his lips and said, "His family has a lot of farmland. 2 spirit stones is already a cheap price. Look, senior brother, there's another guest." The young disciple's eyes were sharp. He had already seen Xiao Hua flying over from afar and hurriedly shouted, "It's really him." That senior brother turned his head and looked, then said curiously, "What's going on with our Misty Cloud sect these days? Why do we have guests one after another?" "Oh, this cultivator is actually a foundation establishment senior. Hurry." Xiao Hua's flying speed was very fast. Under that senior brother's hurried urging, Xiao Hua had already flown in front of them. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to land, several disciples stepped forward and bowed. "Junior greets Senior. May I know why Senior has come to our Misty Cloud sect?" "I, Xiao Hua, have come to pay a visit to your sect leader Yun Tingyu Yun." Xiao Hua came with a smile and said warmly, "Senior Xiao, please wait a moment. Junior will send a message." The Misty Cloud sect disciple quickly took out a messaging talisman and said a few words before sending it in. In a moment, a vigorous figure flew over. It was a foundation establishment middle stage cultivator. That cultivator's cheeks were thin and long, his skin was slightly pale, and his eyes were slightly narrowed. He seemed to be somewhat sleepy. "I, Yun Qinglai, greets fellow Taoist Xiao." That cultivator landed on the ground and also politely cupped his hands in greeting. "I, Xiao Hua, have some private matters to discuss with your sect leader Yun. Fellow Taoist Yun, please lead the way." Xiao Hua returned the greeting and still called himself Xiao Hua. He didn't mention his sect, which clearly meant that this trip had nothing to do with his sect. Seeing Xiao Hua's calm appearance, Yun Qinglai slightly frowned. However, since Xiao Hua didn't mention his sect, he could only smile and say, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please follow I." "Thank you for your trouble." After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he flew behind Yun Qinglai and entered Green Cloud Mountain. Along the way, Xiao Hua slightly released his divine sense and gradually came to a decision in his heart. He saw that although Green Cloud Mountain also had layers of restrictions, it was very obvious that these restrictions had long been worn out. Many places were full of flaws and looked like they hadn't been repaired for a long time. Compared to Tianmin Mountain's Huang family, it was quite inferior, not to mention the Imperial Thunder sect. After seeing a foothill, He came face to face with an extremely long flight of stairs that went perfectly straight from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, there was a huge archway towering majestically. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you can't fly here. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to follow I up the mountain. Flying in front of the straight flight of stairs, Yun Qinglia's figure landed and said somewhat proudly, "This is the location of my Misty Cloud sect's ancient restrictions. I have no choice but to do so. Please forgive me." No matter, Xiaohua also felt a faint suction force on his body. He said with a smile, "The guest will follow the host's wishes. This Xiao will definitely abide by your sect's rules." When Xiaohua walked step by step up the mountain peak, he saw that on top of the huge archway, there were two huge rain and dew characters in front of him. Moreover, around the two words rain and dew, there were all kinds of raindrop-shaped stripes. At first glance, it looked like some strange talismans. This archway seems to be somewhat similar to Yunwu Mountains, Xiaohua suddenly realized. However, Yun Qinglai ignored him and directly passed under the archway. He simply didn't let Xiaohua see it himself. Xiaohua's divine sense slightly swept over the archway and then left. After the archway, a huge, dilapidated palace hall appeared in front of Xiaohua. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. Just now, in his divine sense, this palace hall didn't seem particularly huge, nor did it seem particularly mighty. However, after passing through the archway and arriving in front of him, a different kind of scenery actually appeared. It really caused him to be stunned. His previous thoughts of looking down on the misty clouds sect immediately disappeared. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please." Yun Qinglai turned his head and saw Xiaohua's shock. He was slightly proud as he entered the main hall first. -8. Chapter 2086. Sure enough, the inside of the main hall was just like how it looked from the outside. It was incomparably big. Pillars that several people couldn't carry supported the roof of the hall. On top of a tall platform, there was a huge stone chair. At this time, a cultivator who wasn't very tall sat on the stone chair. This cultivator's height was that of an ordinary person. If it was anywhere else, it wouldn't be considered much. However, when he sat on the stone chair, he appeared very short. He even looked like a child playing around. Looking at the cultivator's appearance, his facial features were regular, his eyes were spirited, and an awe-inspiring aura of righteousness rushed out. "I, Xiaohua, greet Sect Master Yun." Xiaohua walked to the bottom of the high platform. Without waiting for Yun Qinglai to speak, Xiaohua's gaze swept across the cultivator on the stone chair and the three foundation establishment cultivators on the high platform. He hurriedly bowed and greeted. The one on the stone chair was naturally Yun Tengyu. He waved his hand rather arrogantly and didn't really return the greeting. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please rise." Xiaohua slightly frowned and muttered in his heart. "Fellow Taoist Xiao," Yun Tengyu said with a smile. "Fellow Taoist didn't say your origin. This sect master really can't see through fellow Taoist's origin. May I know why fellow Taoist has come to my Misty Cloud sect?" Xiaohua explained. "This Xiao came here for my own personal matter. It has nothing to do with the sect, so I wanted to hide my origin. I hope Sect Master Yun can understand." Yun Tengyu nodded and quietly listened to Xiaohua's explanation. This Xiao heard that Misty Cloud sect has a kind of cloud and rain technique. "I wonder if it's true?" Xiaohua said straightforwardly. "Oh, fellow Taoist, what do you mean?" Yun Tengyu's face revealed a strange smile. He glanced at the three disciples around him and asked. Xiaohua thought for a moment and then told him what he had encountered. He then said sincerely, "The secular people of Fanzhuang really have no way out. This is why I have come to your honorable sect. I want to ask your honorable sect's disciples to send rain to dispel their drought." "Oh, so it's like that." Hearing Xiaohua's story, Yun Tengyu seemed to be relieved. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao didn't mention some cloud and rain technique, but my Misty Cloud sect's condensing rain talisman. Moreover, didn't fellow Taoist Xiao say it? Misty Cloud sect's disciples who saw the drought have already gone to Fanzhuang? It's just that they don't have any spirit stones, so how are they going to get us to help them? My Imperial Thunder Sect's condensing rain talisman is not easy to make, and it also costs spirit stones. Can't fellow Taoist Xiao see? My Misty Cloud sect is now so poor that we can't even repair the main hall of the sect. If we don't rely on these yellow talismans to obtain some spirit stones, how will we survive? Although spirit stones are important, yellow talismans are rare, and your sect's palace must be repaired. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but aren't human lives more important than these? Is human life important? Yun Tingyu asked with a smile. Is that so? Of course, Xiao Hua said decisively. But I don't think the lives of those secular people are important. After all, they have nothing to do with me. The corners of Yun Tingyu's mouth curled up, and he unexpectedly said, whether or not he is important, I am not willing to discuss with fellow Taoist Xiao. Even if he is incomparably important, without spirit stones, my Misty Cloud sect will not sell a single condensing rain talisman. Looking at Yun Tingyu's upright facial features and upright temperament, Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh. Isn't this the legendary sanctimonious? Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, I am not here to discuss with fellow Taoist Yun whether or not the lives of secular people are important. Since your sect uses the condensing rain talisman, I will buy some condensing rain talismans. Wouldn't fellow Taoist Xiao have said so earlier? Yun Tingyu said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Yun, please give me 100 condensing rain talismans. Xiao Hua nodded. Oh, 100? Yun Tingyu frowned. From what fellow Taoist Xiao said, Fanzhuang only has a few mountains. 5 condensing rain talismans for each mountain would be enough. Why does fellow Taoist want so many? Why would a businessman be afraid of others buying too many? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Hee, I am just casually asking. Yun Tingyu said with a smile to Yun Qingjin. Go get 100 high-grade condensing rain talismans. High-grade? Yun Qingjin was stunned, but before he could hesitate, Yun Tingyu continued. It is the 100 high-grade condensing rain talismans that I personally refined yesterday. Personally refined and high-grade were emphasized. Yes, disciple understands. Yun Qingjin came to his senses and left with a smile. Xiao Hua saw and heard clearly, and he sneered in his heart. Fellow Taoist Xiao is from Fanzhuang? Yun Tingyu said with a smile. No, I have nothing to do with Fanzhuang. Io, that's strange. Yun Tingyu said strangely, since fellow Taoist Xiao has nothing to do with Fanzhuang, why did you spend so many spirit stones to help them? Nothing, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said. I just can't stand watching someone die, so I had to do it myself. So, fellow Taoist Zhao's other yellow talismans are also used by other places? Yun Tingyu didn't seem ashamed and asked with a smile. Yes, fellow Taoist Yun is right. Xiao Hua nodded. Oh, Yun Tingyu looked at Xiao Hua thoughtfully. After a moment, he said with a smile, as far as I know, the farmers near Yu City are suffering from drought. It is the same near Qi City. It seems that the whole Ming country is suffering from drought. Fellow Taoist Zhao's 100 yellow talismans. I'm afraid they are just a drop in the bucket. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, I also think so. What is Sect Master Yun's plan? At this time, Yun Qingjin came back with a stack of yellow talismans in his hand. Well, fellow Taoist Xiao, take these condensing rain talismans. Yun Tingyu pointed with his finger. One condensing rain talisman is a high-grade spirit stone. These 100 condensing rain talismans are 100 high-grade spirit stones. Ah? Not only was Xiao Hua surprised, but Yun Qingjin's eyes also flashed with a strange color. Xiao Hua said with a gloomy face, Sect Master Yun, a high-grade fireball talisman is only a mid-grade spirit stone, right? Your condensing rain talisman is only a high-grade spirit stone? Ha ha ha, Yun Tingyu said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xiao, do you know what is called rare things or precious? In the entire Dawn Rain continent, who doesn't know how to refine a fireball talisman? But what about this condensing rain talisman? This sect master knows that other than my Misty Cloud sect, no one else knows how to refine it. This, Xiao Hua's face showed hesitation. It wasn't that he didn't have spirit stones, but how could he feel comfortable exchanging them for trash condensing rain talismans like this? After thinking for a moment, under the gaze of Yun Tingyu and the others, Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and said, "Okay, since it's like this Xiao can only do this." Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to take out spirit stones, Yun Tengyu's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "Actually, fellow Taoist Xiao, this sect master has another idea. I don't know if fellow Taoist is willing to listen." "Oh, there is another way?" Xiao Hua said with a happy face. "This Xiao is all ears." "Well, fellow Taoist Xiao, please step up and talk." Yun Tengyu pointed with a smile. Xiao Hua looked and stepped up to the high platform. He stood at the edge of the high platform and said, "Sect Master Yun, please speak. Actually, since fellow Taoist has come to my Misty Cloud sect, you must know something." Yun Tengyu saw Xiao Hua stand still and said sincerely, "This condensing rain talisman is of little value in my Ming country's cultivation world." So sect Master Yun also knows?" Xiao Hua sneered. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you don't know the cost of firewood." Yun Tengyu waved his hand. "My Misty Cloud sect is such a big sect, and this old man is the sole leader. If I don't have a source of spirit stones, how can this old man be the sect master?" "Yes, this Xiao knows." Xiao Hua nodded. "Sect Master Yun, please explain." "Good. Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed a straightforward person." Yun Tengyu clapped his hands and said, "This Yun thinks that instead of spending spirit stones to buy my Misty Cloud sect's condensing rain talisman, why not directly by the refining method of the condensing rain talisman?" "Ah?" As soon as Yun Tengyu said this, the entire hall became silent. Even Yun Xinglai and the others were dumbfounded. "Great." Unexpectedly, after Xiao Hua heard this, he beamed with joy and said, "If Sect Master Yun has this idea, it is exactly what I want. I wonder what price this Xiao is willing to pay." "Sect Master," Yun Xinglai said anxiously, but before he could speak, Yun Tengyu coldly snorted, "This Sect Master is speaking. There is no reason for you to speak." "Yes." Yun Xinglai gritted his teeth and lowered his head in silence. "What my Misty Cloud sect lacks is spirit stones. If fellow Taoist Xiao can take out enough spirit stones, this talisman refining method, fellow Taoist can take it." Yun Tengyu said in a low voice, "However, fellow Taoist Xiao must make a hard oath that you can only refine it by yourself and absolutely cannot pass it to others." "Of course. This Xiao still knows." Xiao Hua nodded, "But I don't know the price." Yun Tengyu's face revealed a smile, squinted his eyes, and transmitted a number to Xiao Hua. "Ah? So much?" Xiao Hua's expression suddenly changed. "Hee, fellow Taoist Xiao." Yun Tengyu laughed. "This number is a bit high, but don't you think it is much more cost-effective than buying the condensing rain talisman? Moreover, if the condensing rain talisman is not that useful, how could my Misty Cloud sect leak out the talisman refining method?" Xiao Hua lowered his head and pondered, while Yun Tengyu stared at Xiao Hua's face, seemingly expecting something. "All right." After a long while, Xiao Hua raised his head and said, "Since fellow Taoist Yun has such sincerity, this Xiao will give Misty Cloud sect a few more spirit stones." Saying this, Xiao Hua lifted his hand and untied a storage pouch from his waist. "Great." Yun Tengyu laughed and clapped. "Sure enough, fellow Taoist Xiao is rich and overbearing. This Yun can't think of which cultivation sect in my Ming country would have such a brainless cultivator like you. You actually dared to reveal your spirit stones in front of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, you are still in someone else's sect." Saying this, Yun Tengyu patted his forehead, and the pressure of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator rushed over. It seemed to be suppressing Xiao Hua and probing Xiao Hua's true cultivation. Ha ha ha! Contrary to Yun Tengyu's expectations, Xiao Hua also laughed. His laughter was even more comfortable than Yun Tengyu's. At the same time, he also released his pressure, directly facing Yun Tengyu's pressure. -8. Chapter 2087. Oh, he's clearly in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Has this guy lost his mind? When the two forces collided, Yun Tengyu's heart was even more at ease. He knew that Xiao Hua was indeed in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Then, with a wave of his hand, the torrential rain technique appeared. The abundant water-based heaven and earth spiritual qi around the main hall condensed into hundreds of hailstones that smashed toward Xiaohua. Each hailstone contained intense spiritual qi. If it smashed into an ordinary cultivator's body, it would be normal for flesh and blood to fly. Xiaohua withstood Yun Tengyu's pressure. His divine sense swept across the main hall, and a burst of contempt appeared in his eyes. He opened his hands, and a faint purple samadhi true fire with traces of crimson red surged out, instantly forming a wall of fire around Xiaohua. Xiaohua himself quickly flew away from where he was standing. At the same time, he waved his hand and dozens of rabbit formation talismans shot towards where Xiaohua was standing. Samadhi true fire. Yun Tengyu was clearly a knowledgeable person. Seeing Xiaohua turn the samadhi true fire into a wall of fire, which was the nemesis of his water element techniques, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. You're a disciple of the Changbai sect? Just as Yun Tengyu was shouting, there was a rumbling sound. Hundreds of hailstones smashed onto the wall of fire. Although the momentum was terrifying, the hailstones were all ignited by the samadhi true fire. They could only intensify the wall of fire, but couldn't break through the defense at all. Ha ha ha, Xiaohua laughed. Is it important where I come from? Yes, it's not important at all. Yun Tengyu said coldly. No matter which sect, even if you're a disciple of the Taiching sect, don't even think about taking one step out of the Misty Clouds sect today. That cold voice really didn't match his handsome facial features. Why aren't you making a move yet? Yun Tengyu slapped his hand and took out a magic treasure that was as green as a lotus leaf from his storage bag. He pointed his finger and countless rays of misty green light poured out from the magic treasure. Yun Qinglian and the others also came to their senses at this time. They each clapped their hands, and a bamboo-like Dharma artifact, a water bottle Dharma artifact, and a watermelon-like Dharma artifact all flew into the air. These Dharma artifacts all emitted green or blue light without exception. Go! The four of them seemed to speak at the same time. Each of them pointed their fingers, and the magic power in their bodies surged. Their magic treasures and artifacts rushed into the air. The magic treasures on the lotus leaves bloomed with a dark green lotus. It absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and spun rapidly. It produced a sharp sound of wind as it rushed towards Xiaohua's head. If a normal cultivator was hit by that lotus, even if their physical body wasn't destroyed, the light protecting their body would definitely be broken. The four people were obviously in perfect coordination. The dark green watermelon magic tool produced ripples of water from all directions, and there was almost a hua-hua sound of water as it pounced towards Xiaohua's legs. The water bottle magic tool poured out a bluish-green misty true water that rushed towards Xiaohua's chest, and that bamboo pole transformed into a row of bluish-green waves that attacked Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua's fingers continuously pointed, and he quickly laid down the simple rabbit formation. He also took the time to raise his hand, and the Samadhi True Fire's wall of fire expanded with a hoot sound. Unfortunately, although the Samadhi True Fire's killing power was formidable, under the fierce attacks of the four Dharma artifacts and Dharma artifacts, it was broken one by one. Haha, the Misty Cloud sect can be considered to have some foundation. Seeing the Samadhi True Fire's wall of fire being broken, Xiaohua was not surprised. He waved his hand and took out the Tong Jiao shears. I'll let you all see this Xiao's methods. Xiaohua sneered. He activated his magic power, and a golden light flashed above the entire main hall. Yun Tengyu and the others only felt a cold air flash before their eyes. The golden light, in an inconceivably short amount of time, swept past the four Dharma artifacts. Yun Qinglian was the first to cry out in alarm. The bluish-green waves formed by his bamboo pole magic tool were instantly cut into two rows by the golden light. Immediately after, the brilliance disappeared, and the bamboo pole revealed its original form in the air. Not only that, but when the bamboo pole fell into the air, it actually staggered slightly. The Tong Jiao shears actually cut the bamboo pole in half. Pu shua, sounds came one after another. The other two Dharma artifacts also revealed their original forms in the air. At the mouth of the water bottle and halfway through the watermelon, deep cracks appeared respectively. Only Yun Tungyu's lotus leaf magic tool was in a slightly better state. The lotus leaf was shattered by the Tang Jiao shears. The lotus leaf trembled and was only pushed back a few feet in the air. See, Yun Tungyu couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The shock in his eyes appeared once again. He looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. He really couldn't imagine how this Foundation establishment middle-stage cultivator could have such astonishing strength. "Give me your life," Xiao Hua sneered. He waved his hand again. Where his magic power surged, the Tang Jiao shears once again flashed with golden light and pounced towards Yun Tungyu. Hee. Yun Tungyu hurriedly pointed his finger at the Dharma artifact. At the same time, lotus flowers appeared one after another from the Dharma artifact. He hurriedly opened his hand slightly and took out a Dharma artifact from his storage bag. His other hand hurriedly formed a Dharma artifact and pointed at the center of the Dharma artifact. Shua shua, Kong. With a roar, the Tang Jiao shears actually cut all the lotus flowers in half. Moreover, it directly hit the body of the Dharma artifact. Pooh! As cracks appeared on the Dharma artifact, Yun Tungyu also suffered a backlash from the Dharma artifact and spat out a mouthful of blood. Gggg. Yun Tungyu's mouthful of blood was spat on the Dharma artifact. The Dharma artifact that had already bloomed with green threads instantly changed again. The green threads gathered together and condensed into green beads. Like tadpoles, they actually made a sound and hit the air around Xiao Hua. Hua hua hua. Within one zhang of Xiao Hua, a ripple appeared in the air. Countless fist-sized raindrops trembled rapidly and flashed with inexplicable spiritual energy fluctuations, rushing toward Xiao Hua. The raindrops were extremely powerful. The Samadhi True Fire actually couldn't burn them. The entire wall of fire was like a layer of nothingness as it was broken by the raindrops. Xiao Hua couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. Hee. Since you've entered my Misty Cloud sect's True Water Array, I'd like to see what kind of ability you have. Yun Tungyu saw that the Dharma artifact was effective and couldn't help but sneer again. You think there won't be a Dharma artifact in a different place? I'm just setting up a Dharma artifact. Is that so? Xiao Hua exclaimed at first, but he didn't panic. While sneering, he slightly grasped with his left hand. The Dharma artifact gushed out from his 5 fingers, and the Dharma artifact was activated. Following that, a burst of white brilliance appeared and enveloped Xiao Hua. The raindrops formed by the true water hit the brilliance. Pung pung pung. With a series of sounds, the brilliance of the Dharma artifact flashed one after another. But flashing was flashing. The brilliance was actually incomparably tough. It was simply impossible to break through. Do you think that this young master moved just to hide? Xiao Hua mocked. -8. Chapter 2088. So what? Yun Tungyu pointed at the disc array, and the pale light appeared again. The raindrops that hit the light shield immediately turned into a layer of water, covering the rabbit array. Moreover, the water quickly condensed into ice, isolating the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Is that possible? Xiao Hua slightly raised the corner of his mouth and once again urged the soaring dragon scissors. Wong wong wong, the soaring dragon scissors made a sound again. A golden light flashed, and with a kachet sound, the layer of ice condensed by the soaring dragon scissors was cut open without any resistance. You, which senior of my Ming country are you? Yun Tungyu's face turned ashen. How could he not know that Xiao Hua's strength was far beyond his? Senior, don't mention it. Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the soaring dragon scissors flew out of the array and pointed at Yun Tungyu. If you want to live, take out the method of making the condensing rain talisman. Well said. Well said. Yun Tungyu hurriedly waved his hand and said, Junior knows his mistake. Junior will take out the jade slip now. Yun Qinglian and the others at the side were even more ashen. They looked at Xiao Hua, who was about to kill them, with fear. Yes, Xiao Hua came to kill the Misty Cloud sect's sect master. On one hand, he was really angry that the Misty Cloud sect's cultivators did not help and killed Yun Tungyu to vent his anger. On the other hand, He wanted to check his own cultivation to see if he could kill his way into 100 grass sect with his current cultivation and take revenge for Shang Huaming. It's useless to look for I. Xiao Hua laughed. You should look for Fanzhuang's father who starved to death. With that, the soaring dragon scissors cut through the air and chopped at Yun Tengyu. But at this moment, a strange scene appeared. However, when Yun Tengyu patted his storage bag as if he was going to take out a jade slip, there was no jade slip in his hand. Instead, a ghastly white palm bone appeared. Pong! The lotus leaf magic treasure flew in front of the soaring dragon scissors and blocked it. However, the magic treasure was once again cut by the soaring dragon scissors. You forced this old man to do this. I'll take you down with me. Yun Tengyu sneered and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the white bones. Immediately after, a green light appeared in his eyes, and an extremely awkward and inexplicable voice came out of his mouth. As the voice came out, Yun Tengyu's face, which was originally like a full moon, rapidly shrank and withered. Green seal text. Xiao Hua saw a faint green halo appear on the white bone. Circles of green seal text flew out from the halo and hit the high platform. He immediately had a bad feeling and didn't dare to be slow. He didn't even care about the rabbit spirit talisman and the soaring dragon shears. He immediately jumped up and used the bright thunder escape to fly away from the high platform. Xiao Hua's flying speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown several feet away, leaving that strange high platform. But just as Xiao Hua's heart relaxed, the entire high platform was covered in a green mist. Woo! A roar that sounded like it came from the underworld was heard. The high platform actually turned into a huge python and pounced out. A huge suction force pulled Xiao Hua out of the platform. Go! Xiao Hua was shocked. Without hesitation, he opened his mouth and spat out a scarlet spirit fire towards the huge python. Wong Wong, a scale several feet long, immediately flew out from the dark green python's body. It also seemed to be formed from green seal characters. The scale surrounded the spirit fire, and Xiao Hua immediately lost control of the spirit fire. Bad. Xiao Hua complained. His bones felt weak and his flesh went limp. His body gave birth to endless exhaustion, and even an incomparable sleepiness appeared in his mind. Xiao Hua bit the tip of his tongue, and a wave of pain appeared. Then, Xiao Hua immediately used his soul cultivation method. A cool feeling came from his soul string, and the sleepiness gradually disappeared. However, in the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua only felt his vision turn black. He had fallen into the huge python's mouth. Go! In this critical moment, Xiao Hua quickly took out the great wisdom sword and smashed it into the huge python's mouth without hesitation. Unfortunately, where the heavy sword passed, the green seal text dodged one after another. However, when the heavy sword passed, the green seal text closed again and covered Xiao Hua. Following the huge suction, Xiao Hua's figure sank into the layers of green seal text and disappeared into the huge python's mouth. Following Xiao Hua's disappearance, the huge python once again turned into green seal text and laid flat on the high platform, gradually disappearing. When the green light disappeared, a few small green seal text flew up and landed on the white bone in Yun Tengyu's hand. Cough cough, the white bone in Yun Tengyu's hand disappeared again. Yun Tengyu couldn't help but cough. Sect Master, Yun Qinglian, and the others witnessed this inconceivable scene. When they heard the cough, their gaze fell on Yun Tengyu's face, and they were even more shocked. They saw that Yun Tengyu's face, which was still upright and proud just a moment ago, was now withered and shrunk. Wrinkles covered his face, and he seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant. Yun Qinglian and the others knew that their sect master senior brother, although his cultivation was at the late stage of foundation establishment and his age was close to 200 years old, because he had eaten a youth-retaining herb when he was middle-aged, his appearance had never changed. They didn't expect that he would change so much now. Congratulations to Sect Master Senior Brother for learning our Misty Clouds sect's ancient green python formation. Yun Qinglian suddenly woke up from her shock and hurriedly bowed to congratulate. Cough cough. Yun Tengyu coughed again. He clapped his hands and took out a jade bottle. He poured out 2 scarlet pills and swallowed them. After closing his eyes for a moment, he said weakly, "What's there to congratulate? The secret to controlling this green python is something that every sect master of my Misty Cloud sect must learn. I was just unlucky to be able to control this green python. Hee. If you congratulate me on this, it's still okay. This green python hasn't been activated for tens of thousands of years." Then, he paused for a long time and sighed. "AI, are you all still envious of I's sect master position? I remember that year when you all congratulated I. I had unspeakable bitterness. Before I took over as sect master, I never thought that controlling the green python would actually require one's lifespan as the price. This Xiaohua, which sect's golden core senior is he?" Then, Yun Tengyu flew into a rage. If he wasn't so weak that he couldn't move, he would have already jumped up. He can actually hide his cultivation and use the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator to deceive I. If it wasn't for him, how could I? This guy really, his heart is worthy of death. Sect Master, let's not investigate this? Yun Qinglian said pitifully. The one you killed was a golden core cultivator. If his sect finds out, my Misty Cloud sect will be completely annihilated. That's right. If it wasn't for Sect Master's divine courage, we would have all died in Xiaohua's hands today. The other two whispered. Yun Tengyu thought for a moment and nodded. Inform the people on duty that today's matter must not be leaked. Yes, Yun Qinglian hurriedly responded, then frowned and said, "How should we deal with the people from Jinhua Mountain? Didn't Sect Master just give them the cold shoulder for a few days and have to explain it to them tomorrow?" They just give them the cold shoulder for a few days. Yun Tengyu thought for a moment and said, "How can we not take spirit stones for 2 foundation establishment cultivators for them? I heard that Jinhua Mountain's yellow talismans are quite popular in Xi." That's right. What did they say about Ming country? That Fu Feng and Lu Yun are tight-lipped. This subordinate didn't find out anything. If we can take this opportunity to get some talisman-making techniques from Jinhua Mountain's Fu family, that would be good. Yun Tengyu said intentionally or unintentionally, then waved his hand and said, "You all can leave. This sect master will be in seclusion for a few days." Yes. Yun Qinglian and the others bowed and saluted. The shock on their faces hadn't faded, and they quietly walked down the high platform and out of the main hall. Sigh. Yun Tengyu let out an aged sigh. His eyes were filled with resentment as he looked at the high platform where Xiaohua had disappeared. Since you forced this old man to shorten his lifespan, this old man will also make you suffer the pain of being cut into pieces and fall into the 9 underworlds. Unfortunately, this old man doesn't have the strength to open the forbidden spell and can't personally witness your tragedy to appease this old man's resentment. Hee, however, your spirit stones are this old man's. Ha ha ha, the storage pouch of a gold core cultivator. This old man has been dreaming of it. At the end of his words, Yun Tengyu's eyes turned into greed. With a wave of his hand, the soaring dragon shears and a dozen talismans that Xiaohua left on the high platform fell into his hand. Immediately, Yun Tengyu stood up from the stone chair and staggered into a quiet room behind it. Not to mention Yun Tengyu's seclusion, Xiaohua's figure fell into the green python formed by the green light on the high platform. The true essence around his body gradually stagnated, and in the end, it was like a rock that couldn't be mobilized in the slightest. How sad. Xiaohua's heart was filled with panic, and he hurriedly released his divine sense. He wanted to see what this place in front of him that seemed to be incomparably black, but also faintly emitting a faint green color, looked like. Unfortunately, he couldn't release his divine sense at all, and not even a trace of it could leave his body. The green seal text is actually so powerful. Xiaohua finally tasted the power of the green seal text. Immediately after, Xiaohua forced himself to raise the great wisdom sword in his hand. It was fine if he didn't move, but just as he moved, a huge pulling force appeared from all around him. Like a pair of huge hands, it pulled Xiaohua's body in all directions. See, Xiaohua's body was incomparably strong, but he still couldn't resist this pulling force. Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air from the pain. Just as he cried out in pain, The light around his body flashed, and Xiaohua's Taoist robe was torn to shreds. The spiritual armor protecting his body also emitted a weak light, as if it was trying its best to resist. However, this force was strange. It directly passed through the spiritual armor and acted on Xiaohua's body, making all of his defenses useless. Xiaohua cried out, struggling left and right. The pulling force became more and more vigorous, wanting to tear Xiaohua apart. Damn it, this young master was too careless. Xiaohua was somewhat regretful. This young master only wanted to rely on the rabbit array to resist the Misty Cloud sect's forbidden technique, but I didn't expect them to have this green seal text. The rabbit array had no effect in the green seal text, and was instead broken into a mess. Although the soaring dragon shears were powerful, it didn't have any effect in the green seal text. However, that Yun Tengyu was also barely able to control the green python. Presumably, he might not be stronger than this young master. This tearing force, how could it be so strong? It's even more powerful than the hands of a nascent soul cultivator. -8. Chapter 2089. With just a few thoughts flashing through Xiaohua's mind, the tearing force penetrated deep into Xiaohua's body. His flesh was torn open, and a pain worse than being cut into pieces drilled into Xiaohua's brain. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan. If he hadn't endured Huang Yi's pain for tens of thousands of years, he would have fainted long ago. What do I do? What do I do? Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly. I can't use the Dao Sex techniques. I'm afraid I can only use the soul strands. Thinking of this, Xiaohua didn't hesitate. He hurriedly urged the soul strands out of the Dharma Eye imprint. Admittedly, it was like a dragon entering the sea. The soul strands were incomparably comfortable in the green seal text and extended rapidly. However, the tearing force around Xiaohua's body didn't lessen in the slightest because of this. Xiaohua couldn't help but roar. The pain had already penetrated deep into his brain. Right at this moment, a strange scene occurred. As the green seal text power penetrated deep into his brain, the green seal text in Xiaohua's mind that he had comprehended earlier drilled out along with the tearing force and danced around Xiaohua's body. As soon as these green seal text appeared, the tearing force was alleviated slightly. However, at this moment, Xiaohua's surroundings were already filled with soul strands. The green seal text easily touched the soul strands, just like what Xiaohua encountered when he was refining the shaman puppet. Occasionally, a feeling of comfort or shock would come from the soul strands. How could Xiaohua not know that this was the perfect opportunity for him to comprehend the green seal text? He even knew that if he could rearrange the green seal text, he might be able to break the tearing force of the green light. But the problem was that he didn't know how to rearrange the green seal text, and he didn't have the time to comprehend it one by one. Because the tearing force was only slightly alleviated, and there were no signs of it stopping, perhaps I should first see how the green seal text is arranged. Xiaohua was like a drowning man who had encountered a straw. He immediately grasped the opportunity. Thus, he hurriedly opened his left hand and opened his Dharma Eye to find the arrangement of the green seal text. It was fine if the delusion breaker Dharma Eye didn't open, but as soon as it did, a huge force rushed towards Xiaohua's left hand, as if the Dharma Eye was a taboo of the green light. In his Dharma Eye, Xiaohua felt tiny green seal script characters spinning crazily, as if pulling on the power of heaven and earth. A green seal script character flew out from his Dharma Eye like a flying sword. Xiaohua panicked. All of a sudden, a powerful suction force emerged from the eye and pulled his divine sense into it. Immediately, his vision was filled with silver. A silver-gray beam of light shot out from the eye and shot straight at the green seal text. A strange sound rang out. It sounded like someone was chanting, but it also sounded like a ghost was chanting. When the light beam hit the green seal text, it instantly dissipated. The tearing force on Xiaohua's body disappeared. Not only that, the silver light gradually melted away with the green seal text. The remaining green seal text fluttered in the air like headless flies. At first, it was disorderly, then it gradually became orderly, as if it was beginning to condense into the green light from before. Now is the time. Xiaohua's mind was enlightened. With a slight thought, he immediately released his soul strands. Every strand of soul strands touched a tiny green seal text. The green seal text was very mysterious. Every time it touched a tiny green light, the entire sky flashed with green light. And Xiaohua's soul strands didn't stop. Under Xiaohua's control, the green seal text characters lined up one by one. Shua shua. For some unknown reason, many green seal text characters that touched each other mysteriously disappeared. And even more green seal text characters gradually shrank, gradually becoming the same size as the green seal text characters that flew out from Xiaohua's mind. After an unknown amount of time, the green seal text characters that filled the sky disappeared. What surrounded Xiaohua were only 36 tiny green seal text characters. Great! Xiaohua was now able to stand freely in the air. How could he not know that he had turned misfortune into fortune? Xiaohua closed his eyes and sent his soul thread into the 36 green seal script characters. An indescribable feeling came from his soul, and the 36 green seal script characters also fused with the soul thread. They flashed into the mysterious dark cloud in Xiaohua's sea of consciousness and disappeared without a trace. However, Xiaohua understood that of the 36 green seal text characters, plus the 3 that he had comprehended earlier, he had already learned 39 of them. Only, he knew a little about the usage of these green seal text characters, but he still didn't know how to use them like Yun Tengyu. The crisis had been resolved, and Xiaohua finally had the time to look at his surroundings. Oh, it's actually another huge space. Xiaohua's gaze swept around and saw that he was inside a huge cave. Looking at the size, it was several times bigger than the Misty Cloud sect's main hall. Moreover, the entire cave didn't have any pillars or the like. Everything could be seen at a glance. What is that? After looking at the general situation, Xiaohua's gaze had already landed on a huge green seal text character in front of him. The green seal text was engraved on a stone wall. It was over 30 meters tall, and it seemed to support the entire cave. There was a huge stone chair in front of it, and it was exactly the same as the one Yun Tengyu was sitting on earlier. Rain. Xiaohua carefully identified it. He could already see that it was the word rain, one of the 39 green seal text characters that he knew. Condensing rain talisman? Misty Cloud sect? Rain, green seal text. Xiaohua flew to the front of the green seal text and stood on the stone chair. He pinched his chin and squinted his eyes to size it up. He was already deep in thought. Needless to say, the Misty Cloud sect was a branch of the ancient cultivation method. The green seal text characters were the foundation of the Misty Cloud sect's cultivation method. However, along with the evolution of the cultivation method, the seal text characters were gradually abandoned or lost. More seal-making techniques were separated from the seal text and formed the current Misty Cloud sect. Damn it! Such a powerful seal text was actually lost. Xiaohua thought of the power of the green seal text and couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Actually messing around with the yellow seal text. Isn't this picking up sesame seeds and throwing away watermelons? After lamenting for a moment, Xiaohua flew up again and prepared to find a way out. However, just as he flew up, he felt a sense of loss in his heart, as if he had lost something. Oh! Xiaohua had always thought that his senses were sharp. He unconsciously stopped in the air and looked around. When his gaze landed on the green seal text again, a flash of light appeared in his mind. Ha ha, this young master is stupid. In the face of such a treasure, I almost entered a treasure mountain and returned empty-handed. Xiaohua laughed loudly. His soul thread was pulled out from the Dharma eye imprint and touched the huge rain character like a tentacle. Just as Xiaohua had expected, something strange happened. -8. Chapter 2090. Sure enough, as soon as the soul strands touched the green seal script, the green seal script rapidly flashed with green light in his transcendence vision. The entire script floated out from the stone wall and gradually turned into a large character formed by many green seal script characters. Immediately after, these green seal script characters flashed one after another. Xiaohua's soul strands also trembled along with these flashes. Suddenly, Cryptic and strange syllables rang out from the dark clouds in Xiao Hua's mind. These syllables seemed to have great power. After each syllable, the mysterious dark clouds would churn once. When the entire green seal script flickered once, the syllables also rang out once. Suddenly, layers of dark rain flashed out from the dark clouds and fell down like raindrops. Cloud summoning rain technique? Xiaohua suddenly realized. Wasn't this a mystical technique that he couldn't even imagine in his dreams? Moving mountains and overturning seas, cloud summoning rain is indeed not a legend. Xiaohua was wild with joy. The ancient celestials relied on the power of this talisman to actually be able to affect the heaven and earth. The legends of almighty beings are no exaggeration. That's right. Xiaohua had comprehended the ghost cultivator's talisman down many times. However, perhaps because Xiaohua's cultivation was too shallow, far inferior to Huangyi's tens of thousands of years of cultivation, or perhaps because Xiaohua was a cultivator and not a ghost, there was always a barrier between him and the ghost cultivator's talisman Dao, and he didn't know how to cultivate it. Now that he saw the green seal script characters for the first time, he suddenly realized that the cultivator's talisman Dao and ghost cultivator's talisman Dao all originated from the ancient green seal script characters. It's just that the path they took was different, and the power they used was different. Yun Tingyu, as a cultivator, recklessly used the green seal script characters in an inappropriate way. The price he paid was his lifespan. Ghosts are souls, just like the mysterious dark clouds connected to the soul strands. They can release the green seal script characters' talisman syllables. I am a cultivator. How can I release such syllables? Xiaohua immediately frowned again. In this way, even if this young master knows how to use talisman Dao and how to summon rain, I still can't bring benefits to the villagers. While Xiaohua was pondering, the huge green seal script characters floating in the air had already gradually disappeared. On the stone wall, the rained character now became much dimmer. However, Xiaohua didn't notice it because at this moment, a wave of light noise came from the stone chair beneath his feet. Xiaohua hurriedly flew to the side. With a wave of his hand, he took out the invisibility talisman. He activated his magic power and pasted it on his body. His entire figure gradually disappeared from the spot. The stone chair gently rotated, and a water-blue halo flashed above the stone chair. When the halo shined brightly, space rippled and Yun Tengyu's figure appeared above the halo. Cough, cough. Yun Tengyu's face was obviously a lot redder, but he was still very weak. He should have been in seclusion, but he was still thinking about Xiaohua's storage pouch. That was why he immediately activated the restriction to come over and take a look after a short rest. When Yun Tingyu's divine sense swept through the entire cave, he didn't see Xiaohua's corpse nor any storage pouch. He couldn't help but stare blankly. Immediately, he felt a warning in his heart. He hurriedly shook his hand, as if he wanted to escape. But it was exactly like the old saying, "What you fear will happen." Just as his whole body glowed, Xiaohua's figure appeared a few feet away from him. Since he was already close, even if it was a gold core cultivator, Xiaohua wasn't the slightest bit afraid, let alone Yun Tengyu, who was in the late stage of foundation establishment and was injured. Xiaohua's fist hit the halo around Yun Tengyu's body. With a burst of sound like glass breaking, Yun Tengyu didn't have time to do anything. Xiaohua's hand grabbed his neck. Senior, please spare my life." Yun Tengyu's hoarse voice struggled desperately. This junior is willing to give all the spirit stones of Misty Cloud's sect to Senior. This junior is willing to give all of Misty Cloud's sects, yes, and the condensing rain talisman Senior wants. This junior has the moving clouds and summoning rain talisman, which is a secret spiritual talisman of my Misty Cloud sect. This junior will give it all to Senior. Hee, Xiaohua sneered. Why would this Xiao covet your spirit stones? If this young master knows about those spiritual talismans and kills you, won't they all fall into this young master's hands? Senior. Yun Tingyu panicked. Senior doesn't know. My Misty Cloud sect is an ancient orthodoxy, and this place is an ancient ruin. Is it that? Xiaohua smiled and pointed his finger. Yes, how did Senior know? Yun Tingyu was stunned. When he turned his head and saw that the green seal text had dimmed, he immediately turned pale with fright. However, before he could express his shock, he felt a sharp pain in his neck. The talismans protecting his body were all broken, and his vision turned black. Everything in the world was far away from him. Xiao Hua never gave any explanation to the cultivators who tried to harm him, especially this Yun Tengyu who treated the lives of the people of the world as nothing. Xiao Hua shook his hand and threw Yun Tengyu's corpse to the ground. He patted his forehead, and the Buddha's sarira flew into the air. Then, he executed a Buddha skill and captured Yun Tengyu's soul. He waited for Xiao Hua to ask him what he wanted to know before transferring the soul away. This seemed to be Xiao Hua's first time trying out this particular Buddhist soul-searching technique. He felt very satisfied. With a wave of his hand, he picked up the storage pouch on Yun Tengyu's corpse and scanned it with his divine sense. He was stunned on the spot. Damn. This Yun Tengyu seems to be too stingy. This storage pouch is full of spirit stones, and there are also a lot of top-grade spirit stones. Why is Misty Cloud's sect so poor? Since it's in this young master's hands, it's better not to waste it. Xiao Hua took out half of the spirit stones from the storage pouch and left the rest inside. Then, Xiao Hua spent a few hours copying the jade slips in the storage pouch one by one. Then, he took out a few seemingly old talismans and said with a smile, "This is the Cloud Travel and Rain Talisman? This Misty Cloud's sect senior is indeed a capable person. Since talismans can't be easily used, they can be turned into talismans for both spirit and yellow talismans. It's just that yellow talismans are easy to refine, but the materials for these spirit talismans are difficult. Today's Dawn Rain continent is really hard to find." After taking half of the yellow talismans, spirit talismans, and his own soaring dragon scissors and rabbit spirit talismans, Xiao Hua took out the palm leaf fan-like hand bone. A wisp of true samadhi fire burned on it, and a series of green seal characters flew out. Xiao Hua used his soul strands to touch it, and 4 more green seal characters that Xiao Hua didn't understand appeared. Great! Xiao Hua was happy and threw the hand bone into the space. Sure enough, the hand bone automatically flew to the other white bones and landed on the left hand. A faint lightning bolt connected it to the other white bones. Then, Xiao Hua cut off Yun Tengyu's Taoist robe and burned his corpse with a wisp of true samadhi fire. Finally, Xiao Hua's figure changed and turned into Yun Tengyu's appearance. He put on the Taoist robe again and flew back to the stone chair. After thinking for a moment, he cast a few unfamiliar spells and a halo covered him. The halo spun rapidly, and Xiao Hua's figure disappeared from the cave. When he opened his eyes, he already appeared in a quiet room. Xiao Hua sat cross-legged and thought for a moment. Yun Tengyu was killed by me, but the Misty Cloud sect's orthodoxy is still here, so I don't need to destroy their inheritance. This Yun Tengyu just happened to be devoured by the talisman, so it's an excellent excuse. I can also do some good for this dead man and gather some good karma. Presumably, Xiao Hua left the quiet room and landed on the main hall. He waved his hand, and a messaging talisman flew out. Sect Master, Sect Master. Xiao Hua's messaging talisman hadn't even flown out of the main hall when a burst of exclamations came. Yun Qinglian and the other Foundation establishment disciples recklessly rushed in from outside the main hall. You wait. Xiao Hua sat on the stone chair and felt very strange. Sect Master. Seeing Xiao Hua sitting on the stone chair perfectly fine, Yun Qinglian was also very surprised. She was extremely shocked and stuttered. Your life spirit tablet, Io? Xiao Hua's heart moved. He knew he was wrong again. He had forgotten about the life spirit tablet of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Cough, cough. Xiao Hua coughed a few times and said with a hoarse voice, Junior brother. The brother in front of you is already not the original brother. This Sect Master Senior brother. Yun Qinglian cried. Junior brother knows. This is the body that Sect Master Senior brother used my Misty Cloud's sect's secret technique to maintain. Senior brother used my Misty Cloud's sect's secret technique just now. His lifespan has already been completely exhausted. All right, you are indeed Yun Tengyu's junior brother. This young master doesn't need to explain anymore. Xiao Hua laughed secretly in his heart. Sigh. Qinglian, you still don't know. Forget it. This sect master doesn't have much time, so I can't explain too much to you. Wait until you understand the essence of my Misty Cloud sect, then you will naturally know what this brother is talking about. Xiaohua sighed again and patted his storage bag. With a wave of his hand, he took out half of the spirit stones and said, "Don't blame this sect master for being stingy. Being in charge of a sect has never been as simple as you all think. This sect master has always been living frugally. These are the spirit stones that this sect master has recorded for 100 years. Now, I will give them all to you, and let the disciples in the sect divide them. Count it as this sect master's final gift to them." Sect master senior brother. Seeing that Xiao Hua actually took out so many spirit stones, the hesitation of Yun Qinglian and the rest instantly disappeared. There was only one sentence in their hearts. When a person is about to die, his words are kind. All right, the second matter is the most important. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Qingyu, come over here." Yes, Qingyu greets the sect master. A middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator stepped forward and bowed. "Yun Qingyu, this sect master will now pass on the position of sect master of my Misty Clouds sect to you. You must properly manage the Misty Clouds sect for this sect master." Xiao Hua said seriously and handed over Yun Tengyu's storage bag to her. "Sect master." Yun Qingyu happily took the storage bag. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "This sect master doesn't have much time. Everything will be simple. You will be in charge of the sect master ceremony. In the future, you can manage it yourself." "Yes, thank you, sect master." Yun Qingyu's tears were about to fall. To be continued. -8. Chapter 2091. The third thing. Yun Tingyu said again, "Before I die, I will look back on the past. I don't regret wasting my time, nor do I feel ashamed for doing nothing. However, I regret that I didn't use my cultivation to do more things for the common people. That Xiao Hua who came from nowhere. What he said is quite reasonable. All of you from today onwards, you should make condensing rain talismans and make rain for the common people in your city and even Ming country. This is my last order. You must do it with all your heart." "Yes, we will do our best to fulfill your last wish." Yun Qingyu and the others bowed with tears in their eyes. "All right, this sect master is about to leave." Xiao Hua stood up. This sect master has already left a quiet place for himself. Before Xiao Hua could finish, Yun Qingyu hurriedly said, "Senior brother sect leader, I have one last question." "Oh, go ahead." Xiao Hua stopped. His heart was beating fast. After all, he was asking Yun Tengyu's soul, and he didn't know much about Misty Cloud's sect. "How should we deal with the Fu family of Mount Jinhua in Shi country?" Yun Qingyu said in a low voice. "Senior brother sect leader seems to be dissatisfied with the spirit stones they took out. Also, after you leave, Misty Cloud sect will have nothing to do with the Fu family of Mount Jinhua. Should we let them go or help them? Please tell us, senior brother sect leader." "Fu Feng?" Xiao Hua was stunned. He was a little surprised and a little embarrassed. He rolled his eyes and said, "Qingyu is guarding Misty Cloud sect. Qinglian and Qingfeng, help them? After all, the Fu family of Mount Jinhua is my old friend." "Yes, we understand." Yun Qingyu and the other two bowed. "All right, all of you, follow me and wait at the entrance of the palace." Xiao Hua's figure floated leisurely like a formless object. "This old man will leave alone. Let this old man's primordial spirit, let this old man's ruined body, dissipate between heaven and earth." As Xiao Hua spoke, he flew out of the main hall and landed in front of the stairs. He followed the long flight of stairs and slowly walked down. His figure was both imposing and seemed to be staggering. The entire Misty Cloud sect was immediately filled with a solemn atmosphere. Yun Qinglian, Yun Qingyu, Yun Qingfeng, and the other disciples couldn't help but kneel down and weep. Xiao Hua's back became increasingly blurry in their eyes. Yes, this Yun Tengyu's character is not good. He is quite sinister and stingy, but the sect leader's prestige is still there. Xiao Hua had already walked far away when he used his divine sense to scan the area. When he saw that the misty cloud sect's people did not follow him, he muttered in his heart. He took off Yuntang's Taoist robe and casually threw it into a stream. Then, with a twist of his body, he entered the ground and headed in Fan Zhuang's direction. As for whether or not Yun Qinglian and the others had come out to find Yun Tengyu, and whether or not they had only seen Yun Tengyu's Taoist robes and were puzzled, that was not something Xiaohua had to consider. Outside of the Misty Cloud sect, Xiaohua really did not put the Misty Cloud sect's disciples in his eyes. When Xiaohua arrived at Fanzhuang, he saw the Fanzhuang's clan leader, Fan Yunxiao, organizing the young and strong people of the clan to plant rice seeds. It looked like it was in full swing, far from the cold and lifeless appearance of a few days ago. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over. Shui had already sensed it and flew out in joy. Everyone also knew that Xiaohua had returned, so they all looked up. Xiaohua whispered in Shui's ear for a moment, then stretched out his hand and took out a dozen condensing rain talismans. Under the urging of his magic power, they were all scattered. Sure enough, streaks of blue light flashed, and under each ray of light, a thin layer of water dozens of feet in size immediately formed, then condensed into rain and dripped down. Many thanks, Taoist Xiao. Everyone's face showed a pleasantly surprised expression. Regardless of the rain pouring on their bodies, and regardless of the mud gradually growing between the fields, they knelt on the ground. Seeing everyone so happy, his heart unconsciously felt at peace, and the corners of his mouth also carried a smile. It seemed that all the previous life and death hardships had been rewarded. This is... Xiaohua suddenly felt that there was something strange in his body. He hurriedly examined it, but saw that within the Buddha fire, there were more and more invisible golden threads, becoming increasingly clear. Xiaohua looked at the extremely pious expressions of everyone under his feet, as well as their grateful eyes, and unconsciously thought of something. These golden threads of the Buddha fire are actually related to other people's gratitude? It seems that the first few golden threads appeared after this poor Taoist saved those martial artists. Immediately, Xiaohua put this matter to the back of his mind. He didn't think of anything in return for saving people, especially these secular people. He knew that they absolutely couldn't help him. These golden threads, it's better to have them, but it doesn't matter if they don't have them. Thank you, Taoist Xiao, for your great kindness. Fan Yunxiao trembled as he bowed, the snow-white beard on his mouth trembling. Old man, this is what we cultivators should do. Xiaohua hurriedly supported him. If all the immortals were like Taoist Xiao, we secular people wouldn't be afraid of any disasters. Fan Yunxiao said as he wiped his tears. Xiaohua knew that he didn't have the ability to guide the entire Dawn Rain continent, so he could only deal with it with a smile. I have already ordered all the Fan family disciples to pay respects to Taoist Xiao every day, and pass on Taoist Zhao's grace to the future generations of the Fan family. Fan Yunxiao said excitedly. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. We'll talk about this later. With this rain, the drought around Fan Manor should be solved. I still have to go to the other places to take a look. If there is a drought, it will also be solved. Yes, it should be like this. Fan Yunxiao smiled apologetically. However, I have a strange matter that I want to tell Taoist Xiao. And, please speak. Xiaohua said with a smile. Fan Yunxiao pointed at the previously sowed field and said, Where did you get the rice that Taoist Xiao took out earlier? If Taoist Xiao still has some, can you bestow some more? Oh, why? Xiaohua's divine sense swept over. At first, it was strange, but then he came to a realization and said curiously, But what's going on? Some of the rice already have some seedlings, some are still not? Oh no, these seeds don't seem to have sprouted at all? Really? They haven't sprouted at all? Fan Yunxiao frowned and said, I thought it was still early, but it turns out that they haven't sprouted at all. It seems that my guess was right. What do you mean by that? Xiaohua also frowned. The rice in his space grew with his own eyes, but he only had a vague impression of how the rice outside grew. All right, I'll let Taoist Xiao know. Fan Yunxiao didn't take advantage of his seniority just because he looked old. He said respectfully, This old man is 73 years old this year, and I've lived in Fan Manor all my life. The furthest I've gone is U City. This old man doesn't have much knowledge, but I do have some skills when it comes to taking care of crops. Xiaohua smiled and nodded slightly. My fan manor's rice has always grown well since I was a child. For many years, the rice was planted at a fixed time, sprouted at a fixed time, headed at a fixed time, and ripened at a fixed time. My fan manor's farmers also harvested at a fixed time. Fan Yunxiao stroked his beard and sighed. But now, everything has changed. -8. Chapter 2092. Since more than 10 years ago, it should be more than 20 or 30 years ago, the situation has gradually changed. At first, the time of germination of the rice seeds changed, then the time of heading changed, and then the time of ripening, harvesting, and sowing also changed. What worries this old man the most is that the harvest is slowly decreasing. Fan Yunxiao said with a pained expression. Ah? Xiaohua almost cried out in surprise. He immediately thought of the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth he heard from a foundation establishment cultivator at the auction in Haoming City. Daoist Xiao. Fan Yunxiao immediately stopped and looked at Xiaohua in panic. It's okay. I seem to have thought of something. Senior, please continue. Xiaohua nodded with a smile. Yes, the agriculture has been declining for more than 10 years, and the climate has also become worse. In this old man's humble opinion, even if this year's drought didn't happen, in a few years, the rice seeds will not be able to be used anymore. Fan Yunxiao said very sadly, I'm afraid that the people of the secular world will starve to death. I understand what Senior is saying. Xiaohua nodded, then pointed his finger and said, How did Senior know that these rice seeds were taken by I? Hee, how could we dare to eat the life-saving food that Daoist Xiao gave us all at once? Farmers all know the principle of using grain as seeds. Without seeds, how can we survive in the coming year? Fan Yunxiao said with a smile. Seeds, survival. Fan Yunxiao's simple words immediately made Xiaohua understand, as if the essence of the Tao of life and death was deeply contained in them. When Taoist Master Xiao brought food again, this old man asked them to plant the rice from before and some of the good seeds that were sent over. Fan Yunxiao explained, however, they have already been mixed together, and this old man knows how to distribute them. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said, I will walk around first. The drought in the vicinity of Yu City is very serious. When I finish this matter, I will come back and discuss it with Senior. Yes, Daoist Xiao is truly compassionate. If an immortal like Daoist Xiao cannot live as long as the heavens, then the heavens must be blind. Fan Yunxiao said gratefully. Xiaohua smiled and pulled Shueshue's hand. The two of them flew into the air and gradually disappeared into the distance. Although the congealing rain talisman was an unremarkable yellow talisman, it was quite difficult to refine. Shueshue didn't know how to refine yellow talismans, so she couldn't help much. Therefore, along the way, Xiaohua refined the congealing rain talisman and Shueshue displayed the congealing rain talisman. In just a few days, Xiaohua and Shueshue had taken control of the areas with the most severe drought before flying back to Fan Manor. Husband, Shueshue thought as she flew, and asked with some doubt, I didn't feel it before, but after doing so many things with my husband, I feel quite satisfied. It seems that this concubine hasn't cultivated for so many years in vain. This is something that this concubine has never felt before. I don't know why either. Xiaohua said with a smile. However, helping others is the foundation of happiness. Being able to help others and being able to be happy, why wouldn't you and I be happy? My husband is indeed different from the cultivators of my Xiaoyu continent. Shueshue's eyes were filled with love, and she said tenderly, it's exactly as Elder Fan said. If a cultivator like my husband can't become a great person, the heavens will really be speechless. Xiaohua hurriedly blocked Shueshue's lips with his index finger and whispered, Elder Fan is a secular person. His words don't need to be taken seriously. We are cultivators, and our words must come true. You mustn't speak nonsense. Shueshue stuck out her tongue and licked Xiaohua's finger and said with a smile, I understand. If I can help you become a great person, what's wrong with this concubine's body being crushed and my soul being scattered? Shueshue. Xiaohua was startled, and he had a bad feeling. He frowned and said, "Why do you keep saying such things? Could it be that there's something wrong?" "Of course not." Shue's charming eyes were like silk, and she said with a smile, "This concubine is just expressing her feelings." Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, then nodded and warned, "Wife, there are some things that can be said, and some things that absolutely cannot be said. If my wife has any warning signs, you must tell your husband as soon as possible." "Inin, this concubine understands," Shue said indifferently. "With my husband's cultivation, this concubine has always been by your side. What kind of warning signs can there be?" "All right." Xiaohua knew that these things couldn't be explained clearly. "Let's return to Fan Manor first." When they returned to Fan Manor, it was just as Fan Yunxiao said. Some of the rice seeds had already sprouted into thumb-sized seedlings, but the majority of the seeds still didn't have any movement. Xiaohua used his divine sense to check, and after a moment of contemplation, he told Shue about it, and then went into seclusion. He still had to wait and see if the remaining seeds could germinate or not. In addition, he urgently wanted to know what kind of secret technique Misty Cloud sect's Yuntingyu used to produce the syllables of the green seal characters. Xiaohua went into seclusion for 14 days, and on the 15th day, he came out of seclusion with a disappointed face. Now, he knew the talisman of the cloud summoning rain technique and also knew how ghost cultivators use these syllables, but what he lacked was how cultivators could produce these syllables. From Misty Cloud sect's ancient records, he indeed knew how Yun Tengyu produced the syllables of the green seal characters, and it was indeed very strange. It was indeed something he couldn't even dream of. But the ancient records clearly said that this was the price of the cultivator's lifespan, and it absolutely couldn't be used unless it was an emergency. Xiaohua was so righteous that he would use his own lifespan to freely squander it. However, it wasn't like he didn't have any gains. He had already seen Misty Cloud sect's cloud summoning rain talisman clearly, and as long as he could find rare spirit beasts, he was confident that he could easily refine this talisman. As for the cloud summoning rain talisman recorded in Misty Cloud sect's records, Xiaohua looked at it again and again, carefully comprehending more than half of it. In addition, while he was cultivating, he also thought clearly that Xiaoyu continent should have encountered a situation where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth changed strangely. Fanzhuang's rice seeds should have been affected by this, and could no longer produce food for ordinary people to eat. And the seeds produced in his space, because of his space's spiritual light, or because the water of the two extreme yin and yang pools in his space had the effect of breeding all living things, were able to produce suitable seeds in this world where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had transformed. "Husband, is there something wrong?" Shue keenly saw Xiaohua's disappointment and hurriedly asked. "Hee, it's nothing," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Maybe your husband's expectations were too high. How is Fanzhuang's situation?" "There are changes, but also no changes." Shue pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Just like before husband went into seclusion, those germinating seeds have already grown strong and healthy. According to the farmers of Fanzhuang, they are growing much faster than the rice they planted before." "What about the changes?" "Fanzhuang has already completely restored to the vitality it had before husband arrived." "Hee, are you very happy to see them?" Xiaohua said with a smile. Shue didn't conceal anything and nodded vigorously. "That's right. Your husband has already found a way to solve the problem of the seeds. Once we finish dealing with the matter here, my wife will follow your husband to another place." Xiaohua replied with a smile. "Husband is really amazing." Shue's face revealed a happy expression. "This concubine has thought for a long time, but there is no way to solve it. I don't know how husband will solve it." "Haha, it's too simple." Xiaohua laughed and said, "Your husband knows that it's enough to give them enough seeds, right?" That's right. But Shue heard this and was naturally shocked. This kind of solution was naturally a cure, but where did the seeds come from? Shue instantly thought of the seeds that Xiaohua took out from his storage bag. However, Xiaohua obviously didn't have any seeds in his storage bag, otherwise, Xiaohua wouldn't have asked her for some spirit jujube. Shue thought of this and very rationally stopped asking. She only smiled and didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua brought Xue Xue to see Fan Yunxiao and gave enough seeds to Fan Zhuang. He didn't say anything else. After all, Fan Zhuang was an expert in farming. Xiao Hua only needed to provide good seeds, and other things, Fan Zhuang could do better than him. Seeing Xiao Hua take out so many good seeds, Fan Yunxiao's eyes lit up. These days, he had been observing the seeds planted in the fields. He found that these seeds were not only resistant to drought, but also grew very fast. They were simply the legendary immortal seeds. The villagers of Fanzhuang knew that with these immortal seeds, even if the drought came again, they would still be able to survive. Spiritual Master Zhao's great kindness, this old man, will be unable to repay you even if his bones are crushed. Fan Yunxiao began to sing praises. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be like this. Elder Fan, these good seeds are for Fanzhuang. However, it's more than 10 times what Fanzhuang wanted. I also hope that if possible, while Fanzhuang is farming, he can also distribute these good seeds to other places in Fanzhuang so that they can all benefit from it. But if Elder Fan..." Xiao Hua's tone suddenly became cold. Rest assured, Spiritual Master Xiao. This old man understands that Spiritual Master Xiao has the hearts of all living beings. This old man has also suffered the pain of starvation. I will not watch others starve to death because of my selfish desires. Fan Yunxiao heard this and immediately knelt on the ground, kowtowing in panic as he answered, "But all people have selfish desires and greed. I hope that Elder Fan will do as you say." Xiao Hua glanced at Xue Xue, and the two flew up at the same time. Spiritual Master Xiao, Fairy Xue is leaving. Fan Yunxiao reluctantly shouted, "Children of Fanzhuang, quickly kowtow and respectfully send Spiritual Master Xiao off." "Thank you, Spiritual Master Xiao." Respectfully send Spiritual Master Xiao off. Hearing this, everyone immediately dropped what they were doing and knelt on the ground, respectfully sending Xiao Hua and Xue Xue off. "AI, what good farmers!" Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. He waved his hand and flew even further away. "Hee, husband, you are really amazing." After flying far away, Xue Xue gave him a thumbs up and smiled. Xiao Hua smiled and squinted his eyes as he looked into the distance. He smiled and said, "Solving the problems of the secular world is really not easy. However, when it comes to solving the disputes between cultivators, your husband is much more amazing." -8